By the time you're about 5, your brain is at like an 80 to 90% of where it will be for the entire rest of its life.
Wait, hold on a second. That is so fascinating.
And the really wild thing is
Dr. Sarah McKay is a brilliant neuroscientist and author. She got her Master's of Science and Doctorate in Neuroscience at the University of Oxford. Dr. McKay is an expert in how the female brain works, puberty, periods, sex, pregnancy, menopause, hormone replacement therapy, and dementia. You're never going to look at yourself or what's possible the same way again. Is it true that female brains are, quote, wired for emotion and that the male brain is more logical?
false, false, false. False.
One of the things that I read in your book is that a woman gets her period about 450 times in her lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening in the female brain when you're going through your menstrual cycle?
Oh, gosh, this is like we could do hours and hours on this one, Mel.
What does the pill do to your brain?
One of my favorite topics, Mel. So
I can't believe you just said that. What is going on in our brains when puberty hits?
brains go through puberty too. And the really wild thing is
How does pregnancy change the brain?
we see this enormous structural reorganization
Really?
and rewiring of the brain through the course of a pregnancy.
What happens? Hey, it's your friend Mel, and welcome to the Mel Robbins podcast. I am so excited that you're here. I am excited to be here with you and to learn together. It's always an honor to be with you and to spend time together. But today's episode, holy cow, is this going to be a good one. And if you're new to the podcast, I just wanted to personally welcome you to the Mel Robbins podcast family. I am so glad that you're here. Because you made the time to listen to this particular episode, here's what I know about you. You're the kind of person who not only values your time, you also value your mind. And today, you're going to learn how to unlock the power of your mind from a neuroscientist who has been studying the brain for over 30 years. And if you're here right now because somebody shared this episode with you, well, that's pretty cool. I want to point out that you have people in your life who care about you, and they want you to understand the truth and the science about how your brain works and how to work with it. Or they may have sent this to you to validate some of the experiences that you've had or that you may be dealing with now, and to give you some tangible things that you could change in order to make your life better from one of the leading neuroscientists in the world. Isn't that pretty cool? So thanks for hitting play. Dr. Sarah McKay is a brilliant neuroscientist and author who has flown over 10,000 miles all the way from Australia to be here in our Boston studios for one reason. She's here for you. Dr. McKay has spent 30 years studying the brain with a specific focus on how 3 factors impact the development of the female brain and the male brain. She got her Master's of Science and Doctorate in Neuroscience at the University of Oxford, which is the #1 ranked university in the world. The entire world. Dr. McKay is an expert in how the female brain works in every stage of life, from utero to puberty, periods, sex, pregnancy, menopause, hormone replacement therapy, and dementia. We are going to walk through every single one of these stages. You're going to learn what's happening in the female brain during each and every one of those stages today. And if you're a guy who's listening, I'm so thrilled you're here because you're going to learn a lot about your brain too. Dr. McKay is the author of 3 best-selling books on brain health, including the Women's Brain book. And here's what she's going to tell you. Your brain is not broken. It is powerful beyond what you can believe. It is adaptable. In fact, it's always adapting. And once you understand this, and you understand the 3 factors she's going to teach you about that you need to know that impact how your brain adapts, you're never going to look at yourself or what's possible the same way again. So please help me welcome Dr. McKay to the Mel Robbins podcast. Dr. Sarah McKay, thank you for jumping on a plane, flying 10,000 miles to be here in our Boston studios. I'm so excited to meet you, to learn from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invite. I'm so excited to be here. It's cool.
We have so much to learn from you. Now, you have been a neuroscientist for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
You have written 3 books about the female brain. You speak and teach about the female brain to audiences around the world. Could you speak to the person who is with us right now and share with them how might life be different if they take everything that you're about to teach us today to heart and they apply it to their own life?
I would like them to know that their brains are not broken. There's a real focus, it seems, on things like brain fog and baby brain and burnout, and, we're forgetful. And there's always a focus on what goes wrong. But when we think about the course of our lives and what neuroscience is actually showing us, it's teaching us that our brains aren't broken. They're adaptable and resilient. And that's the main message.
Is it fair to say, just for the person listening, that when you talk about male, female brain, you're talking from neuroscience and a biology standpoint?
Yeah, that's
we're
what
not
I'm
having a
talking
conversation
about
about gender.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can talk about gendered experiences, the experiences of being a person in the world who is a girl, who is a boy, or perhaps the identity that you have. But typically, where neuroscience is focused is looking at looking at brain biology.
Dr. Mackay, I want to give you some of the common things people say about the female brain. And can you tell us if these are fact or fiction?
Okay.
Is it true that female brains are, quote, wired for emotion and that the male brain is more logical?
Well, false, false, false. False that there's a male brain that's wired like this and a female brain that's wired like that. I mean, men feel emotions, and I'm quite logical. I'm sure you are too, Mel. So, false.
And that female brains are wired for intuition and the mother instinct. Is that a thing that we're hardwired for?
I think intuition is a human phenomenon. It's not male or female. And that's really based on experience and wisdom, and that's not the sex-based difference.
How about women make rash decisions? We're very emotional decision makers.
That's really feeding into that stereotypical myth that because women have a menstrual cycle or our hormones change and fluctuate, that's kind of what's driving us. And I don't think that's the case. I mean, I feel like quite a logical, rational being.
I feel the same way, but I can get really pissed off and emotional too.
Yeah, but I mean, I think all males can too. I think perhaps we've been socialized perhaps to express those in different ways. But the idea that women are so emotional and irrational, and that somehow emerges from our female pink brains from Venus is just false.
Let's talk about math.
Yeah, I think math, or maths as I say, I add the S on. This is one of these stereotypes which is pervasive. It's all around. It's all around the world. It starts quite young and it extends right through, this idea that males are more brilliant. It's this real stereotype. And males are also very confident about their brilliance, or their apparent brilliance, versus women who are a whole lot more humble. And I think even this idea that boys are brilliant and girls are perhaps less brilliant, but they're hardworking, starts really young. And so this is another piece of research that I always like to discuss. It came from a research group in New York, and we can put it in the show notes. So the researchers went in and they were looking at children in those first few years of elementary school. So they went in and talked to kids who are about 5 and 6 and said, hey, who do you think out of these two people in these images here are going to grow up, are super smart? There's a picture of a male and a picture of a female. And they asked them, 5 and 6 year olds, and the girls picked the woman and the boys picked the man, right? And then they say, who wants to play the game for super smart children? And all of the girls put their hands up and say me, and all the boys put their hands up and say me. Then they go back a couple of years later and the kids are 7 and 8. And they say, who of these people is smart, the man or the woman? And all the boys go, the man, and all the girls go, the man. And then they say, who wants to play the game for the super smart kids? And all the boys go, me. Some of the girls still go, me. But lots of the girls go, oh, that's the game for the boys, because the boys are the smart, brilliant ones. And that starts to emerge, and they've gone and they've looked at this in different parts of the world, that kind of by about ages 7, boys have think that they're brilliant, and the girls have started to recognize, well, it's the boys that are brilliant. Being clever and good at maths is a boy thing.
So how do you explain that as a neuroscientist? Is that because of the images you see in the media and the people that are in elected office and just the world reflecting back to you. And so subconsciously, your brain is recognizing a pattern and it starts to go, oh, people who look like that do things like this. I look like this, which means I don't do things like that. Is that kind of what's happening?
I think it's all of the things. It's everything from TV to books to even the way we talk about it. And I think we can be incredibly well intentioned as well, and perhaps give a bit of implicit messaging. And there's some phrases I think people use, and I always try and pull them up on it. They might go, oh, well, girls can do maths too, or girls are just as good at maths as boys. And that's kind of implying that boys are the reference point and then girls can also do that, or boys are the maths people, but girls can be maths people too. So I think we almost need to be really careful about the implicit messaging we're inadvertently sending little girls by saying girls can too. Perhaps we should be saying there is no difference in ability to do maths between boys and girls. Start talking about what the science actually shows.
Is that what the science shows? There's no difference between a boy or a girl's ability to do math.
If we got any boy and any girl, just randomly picked them, we couldn't see differences in math scores. Some studies, some of the time, if we were to look at like 10,000 boys age 9 and 10,000 girls age 9, there might be a few extra boys scoring right at that sort of the top marks, but like a teeny tiny amount. And that's perhaps where that gendered stereotype comes from. But what no one's ever saying, although perhaps people might have kind of come across that, if we were to do the same perhaps with verbal ability or reading ability, there might be a few girls kind of right at the top there as well. And there's this other crazy study, I believe this was published in the New York Times, where they looked at Google searches and they found there were twice as many Google searches for "is my son a genius" than "is my daughter a genius?" But people were more likely to search for "is my daughter fat" or "is my daughter ugly" than "is my boy."
Now, if you if you dial down, though, Dr. Mackay, to the neuroscience implications of this, if you're seeing by the age of 7 or 8 a belief system and patterns that get reflected back to little boys that say you're smarter or you're this, and then the pattern that gets reflected back to the female brain, referring to the experience and the development of a brain inside the little girl's body, how does that messaging change the wiring and the firing and the connections that happen in the brain? Do you see what I mean? Because 100%. The beliefs and the patterning start to create patterns of beliefs and behavior that then lock in and change the development of your brain.
Yeah. I mean, you've said it. That's precisely what happens. And once children start to believe something about themselves, then they will choose to opt in or opt out of certain activities and behaviors, or perhaps not try. We do start to see little girls start opting out. I used to do some work on one of my, I've got 2 sons who are now teenagers, and when they're at primary school, I used to go and help out in their classroom. And I remember one little girl asking me what I did as a job. And I said, oh, I'm a scientist. She says, oh, well, I really love dolphins, but I can't be a scientist because I'm no good at maths. And I was like, oh, I nearly cried. I was like, we need to sort of stop these messages, because as soon as you start believing about that yourself, even when you're a tiny child, you're going to start opting out and you're not going to have the enriched experiences, which is what a little brain needs. And we see this all around the world, and we see this permeating all the way through the lifespan.
That is amazing. And so I think it's really important that as you're listening, that you actually take away, there is no difference. Boys and girls are both good at math. They're both capable of being good at math. They're both capable of developing the skill of math. But this is an important thing to hover on, because what you're pointing to is that the messaging and your life experiences start to shape the way that your brain wires up and the beliefs that you have, which then impact how you move through the world. I want to back up and ask you a question, because I'm just curious. If you open up somebody's head and you take a brain out, would you be able to tell whether it was male or female?
No, just by looking at that, if you were blinded to the human that you took it out of, and a brain surgeon wouldn't be able to open it up and look at it and go, well, that's male and that's female. On average, male brains are maybe like 5 to 10% larger than female brains, but part of that is accounted for by body size and skull size. That brain is kind of driving a bigger body around the world. But even then, you're not going to be able to look at a single brain and go, that's male or that's female.
The reason why I'm asking this question is because I think already what I'm realizing is the mistake that you make when you hear female and male brain is thinking that structurally the brain itself is completely different. And what you're here to say is no, but because of neuroscience and because of neuroplasticity, the brain is constantly changing, adapting, and rewiring. And so when you say the word female brain, you're basically saying that the female brain adapts and changes differently than the male brain based on the fact that the experience of being female and the hormones that you have and the way that your body changes impacts the development of the brain. Is that what you're basically saying? And is that the right way to think about it?
Yeah, that's one way to think about it. And another way I think about it is often we think that biological sex is the biggest difference between two people, right? So I've got this study I can tell you about that I think kind of helps explain what I'm trying to say here. So this study was published in 2023, and they had nearly 8,000 MRI scans of healthy young humans who are like in their 20s and 30s. And an MRI scan is when you put a human in their brain in a brain scanner and you like kind of take a photo of the brain structure.
Okay.
And then they gathered them from 29 different countries in the world, and then they ranked those countries based on gender equality. So they looked at things like access to education or work opportunities, etc. And so countries that would score really high in gender equality would be like the Scandinavian countries, like say, Denmark and Sweden. And countries that scored lower in this study were places like Brazil and Turkey and India. And it turned out when they compared male and female brains in these countries with more equality, the brains were more similar. In countries with greater gender inequality, male and female brains were more different. And the male brains everywhere were the same. It was the women's brains, the female brains in countries with gender inequality that were more different. And so the researchers think it was something to do with access to education and the stress of the whole living in this kind of society with structural sexism, etc. So we've got biological sex there determining this particular metric that they measured in the MRI scan, but you've also got the gendered experiences of people living in those countries.
Dr. Mackay, based on the study, I just want to try to give something back to you to see if I'm interpreting what you just shared correctly. What that study suggests, especially given that the male brains didn't change a lot, but the female brains did based on the inequity, the stress, the access to education, the messaging to women in various parts of the world, that the differences that emerge between the male brain and the female brain have a lot to do with the external factors and social conditioning and the stress and trauma and whatever else that the human being with the brain is experiencing?
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
What are some of the things that really impact the development of the female brain and the experience of the female brain that maybe a lot of people don't even stop and consider are impacting brain development?
I think this study in particular, the researchers are very careful because we're scientists. We always like to be very careful to say they couldn't tell exactly what to attribute those differences to. But one overarching idea that we often talk about in this field is the idea of enriched experiences or enriched environments. So this is living somewhere obviously safe, where they can explore, when children can be educated, when there are opportunities to be able to sort of explore the environment and learn and be shaped by it. And it seems that in the case where there is greater gender inequality, the little girls in those parts of the world don't have as many enriched opportunities as the little boys do.
That makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because, I remember Gabor Mate was on the show and he was talking about health outcomes for women and was pointing to the rise in autoimmune diseases that are impacting women, and basic said, obviously there's biological factors, there's factors where people are more predisposed from a gene perspective, but that it is irrefutable that women experience more stress. They're the victims of more violence. They experience more trauma, and in parts of the world are also discriminated against. And that those adverse life experiences, which are not your fault, certainly impact your immune system. It impacts your nervous system, which in your research certainly also has an impact on the brain that the brain develops. And so that's just super helpful to kind of have as a backdrop, only because when you talk about the male and female brain, a dummy like me is like, oh, she's talking about the difference between the male and the female brain. And there must be different. Like a woman has a vagina, a man has a penis. They're different. You're basically saying, no, the experience of being is different. And that can have an impact on the way things develop and function. So you've developed this 3-part framework that can really help us better understand the brain and how it works and how it's programmed and what impacts it. Can you walk us through that?
Well, it's inspired by the biopsychosocial framework, which is a really boring way to talk about things. So I like to talk about biology as being the bottom up. So our brain is receiving information from our bottom up body. Okay. So that is everything from our hormones to the food we've eaten to, muscle tension to sensations we can feel in our body, to all of the signals that you wouldn't have a clue what your gut pH is at any moment in time. So your brain is receiving all of that data. Data is also streaming in from the outside world through our senses, through what we see, what we hear, and if something's close enough to us, we could smell it or taste it or touch it. And that includes everything from the rising and setting of the sun to other people and our interactions with them, to our lived environments, to what is streaming in on that, phone that we're holding in our hand. And that's become a really big outside-in influence within the last decade or two. And the brain is then making meaning of what's happening in our body in the context of the outside world. But we've also got what I call top-down, and that could be our thoughts, our expectations, our past experiences, all of which is kind of mixing up with the bottom-up, the outside-in, and the top-down. And each of these factors can influence others. So we know that perhaps an outside-in influence could shape a top-down experience. So perhaps loneliness could shape the experience of depression. Or we know that something bottom-up can shape something going on in our brain. So we know during pregnancy, for example, the hormones during pregnancy shape and sculpt our brain so that we interact with the outside in, a baby, in a particular way. So that's just how I like to simplify the complexity of all of the information that the brain is making meaning of at any one moment in time.
Let me see if I can give that back to you. So you have a 3-part framework, and the first one was bottom up, which basically the way I would put it is every single physical input data point that is happening in your body is messaging up to the brain. And that's one thing that shapes your brain. It's one thing that impacts your brain. Second thing is you're getting flooded from the outside world through your senses, from the headlines to people's moods to all that stuff. And all of that actually also is input into your brain that changes and shapes your brain, how it functions, the patterns, all of it. And then you said top down, which is the thoughts, the messaging, the things that you're thinking about that you're trying to make sense of is also impacting. And you're talking about like the physical structure, the neuroconnections, like all of that?
And the brain is kind of processing all of that information and then going, well, what should I do next?
Well, what I love about this, because it's very encouraging and empowering, is that if all of these 3 inputs, the physical body, the outside world, the things that you say to yourself are actively shaping your brain, then if you get more intentional about all 3 of those things, then you can actively shape your brain in a positive way, particularly if you understand the developmental cycle that your brain is in
Yeah.
and sort of the objective that it's trying to
Yeah.
achieve. I would love to take a moment and really understand how the brain continues to develop throughout a woman's life. And
Yeah.
so let's start at the beginning. Are there any other differences in terms of the way the brain develops between a baby boy and a baby girl?
Not really. Typically, when we're looking at that developmental trajectory of the brain from kind of birth through to puberty, little children's brains kind of develop along a pretty predictable trajectory. And there will be more differences in how, children are raised or the life experiences they have, or heaven forbid, adverse experiences they have, but then there would be between males and females. And so during that sort of first year of life, there's this explosive brain growth. We've got new neurons being born, which are a type of brain cell. And the development in that first year of life is like 5 times faster than the next 5 years. That preschool development is faster than the entire rest of your life. So by the time you start school, your brain is at like an 80 to 90% of where it will be for the entire rest of its life.
Wait, hold on a second. By the time you're in preschool?
You're at primary school.
Primary.
So elementary school, you would
Okay.
say. So by the time you're about 5, your brain contains almost all of the neurons it will ever have. And what you start to see from then on is the connections between the neurons, or synapses we call them. We start to sort of see them forming circuits, making connections, pruning and tuning. And most of the development we see through sort of mid and late childhood up to puberty is not so much adding new neurons and getting bigger and bigger, but kind of refining the connections and streamlining the circuits in the brain so the brain can kind of get on with the business of learning how to be a little human.
After kind of the primary school, when we get into puberty, what is going on in our brains when puberty hits, and why does it feel so crazy intense and confusing?
Yeah. So I always like to say brains go through puberty too.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Because we think about it as being something that our body does.
Yeah.
But our brains are going through puberty too. So if let's just focus on female puberty, but male puberty happens too. And in fact, male and female brains follow a similar trajectory, but kind of almost kick-started by sex hormones. So it doesn't matter whether it's the estrogen in the girls' brains or the testosterone in the boys' brains, they kind of follow a similar trajectory.
Okay.
And in fact, just to kind of clarify that, we often, you might have heard this idea that girls' brains are more mature than boys' brains when they're going through the teenage years. But that's because girls on average tend to go through puberty about a year or so earlier than boys. And what we know is that brains are more likely to track along pubertal stage than chronological age.
Oh.
Yeah, because you think about, all of the kids that you've ever known when they start going through puberty, and you could get a boy who's going through puberty quite young, like perhaps, he's 6 foot tall, his voice is dropped and he's got hair everywhere and he's 12. Whereas you could have a little girl who's 16 who hasn't started her periods yet. Well, his brain would perhaps be at a later stage of development than hers would be.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but we typically think that girls' brains are more developed than boys, but that's just because on average, girls hit puberty a year earlier.
No wonder middle school is so confusing, because you
Crazy.
basically may be sitting next to somebody who's got like a 19-year-old brain, but you yourself have like the 12-year-old pubertal stage in your brain. Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So there's sort of like a biological clock sort of switches over in your brain saying, hey, it's time to start puberty. And then that sends a message down to your ovaries. And then the ovaries sort of start that monthly cycle. It takes a while for ovulation to kind of set in as we're going in through puberty. But then we start to see the ovaries releasing pubertal hormones or sex hormones, primarily estrogen and progesterone. And what we see in brains then is a lot of the growth that happens during childhood in the brain, particularly the grey matter, which is kind of the wrinkly outer kind of covering of the brain, and also some little subcortical structures, we see that sort of start to refine and streamline. So I said we've got all of the neurons, all the brain cells that we're ever going to have, but what we see is the connections between them kind of pruning and tuning. So we see the ones that we don't need almost being kind of pruned away, and the ones that we want to be there, they kind of become tuned.
What ones do we not need?
Well, what determines what ones stay and what ones go are the experiences that we have. So the brain kind of goes into this sort of new phase of sensitivity to experiences.
Really?
Yeah, very similar to what we see when a little child's like learning to talk. So their language centers of their brain go into this critical period, and those little people will seek out experiences of language. They're constantly pointing and asking why and wanting to get your attention. They're constantly wanting you to converse with them because the language centers in their brain need conversation to wire up. When you're going through puberty and adolescence, a large part of that reorganization and pruning and tuning is in the social brain. And that's when we start to see those parts of the brain reorganize and shape. And what is kind of required, I think, fundamentally to go from the family nest out into the world and, build a new tribe of your own is courage. And one thing that we see is the flip side of courage is bravado. So we've also got layered on top of all of the social brain development, we've also got a lot of sensation seeking, like wanting to kind of go out and have all of these experiences, because that's kind of what courage to leave the family nest is kind of resulting in as well. It's like, I need to go out and I need to try all these new things and I need to have these experiences and I need to do all of these things with all of these different people, because the brain requires all of that to, one, rewire and reorganize to become an adult, but two, to be brave enough to become an adult.
This is so cool. Because basically the brain has all of this programming ready to come online. And it's the hormones during puberty that are like, all right, it's go time. You hate your parents. Your friends are important. You need a significant other. Your town that you grew up in sucks, and it's time to go explore the world.
Yes.
You hate everybody and everything, and you think you know it all.
Yes.
That's basically the wiring in the brain.
100%. 100%.
And is there a difference between the way that puberty for the male brain brings that online, or the way that boys tend to respond to that change, versus the way that the puberty hormones and all of that coming up and lighting up in the brain is different for girls?
I mean, we do start to see some of the sex differences that we see in adulthood do start to emerge around puberty. And we can talk a little bit about perhaps mental health in a moment. But in terms of that developmental trajectory from a child's brain to an adult's brain, we all go through that, but the experiences that we're kind of seeking out are the same types of experiences, and often they're with each other, of course. And we've got that, we see these behaviours sometimes play out differently, and part of that may be, particularly in young males, testosterone does drive a tendency towards some types of behaviours. That sensation seeking in particular, which looks to adults like really dumb decision making or risky behaviour. Girls might be less likely to do the same kinds of reckless activities, but there are some things that girls can do that might not necessarily be to their benefit. But we might need to encourage them a little bit more, even if it's just to do something that might feel to them risky, like, I don't know, putting your hand up in the classroom and asking a crazy question. There's different types of risks that people take depending on what kind of peer approval they're going to be getting. So it's very hard to separate out the risk-taking behaviour there from that social aspect of peer approval.
What I find fascinating is just that this is all in the brain ready to activate, and you can get very frustrated if you're a parent or if you're the older sibling, and we roll our eyes at those years without this recognition that actually this is part of what the brain goes through that is developmentally accurate and normal for somebody that age.
Yeah, all through childhood, if we were to have diagnosed anxiety, depression, boys and girls are pretty similar, and we do start to see a divergence at puberty. Boys, of course, can experience anxiety and, of course, experience depression, but we do see a higher incidence in girls. And I think then the next question to ask is, well, what causes something like depression, or what causes something like anxiety? And I always say depression comes in many shades of blue, and there's as many shades of blue as there are causes of those shades of blue. And this is when I like to get back to my basic model of, we've got this brain sort of sitting in a universe, right? It's sitting in our body. So there's all of this information that it's receiving from our body, everything from hormones, and we tend to just blame the hormones, but there's a lot going on in our biological bodies that we can do to take care of our brains: sleep, exercise, food, all of the things that we as mothers tell us to do. So we've got our bottom-up biology, which we could tweak and shape and shift to influence depression outcomes. We've got a lot of outside influences, education, family, do you have stable, loving relationships? So we've got all of that in the outside world. And if we're breaking friendships, or we're lonely, or we're stressed by social media, our brain is making meaning of that information, the outside in as well as the bottom up. And then we've got top down, because we're humans. So we're constantly telling ourselves stories and making meaning of what's going on. So perhaps we're ruminating, or perhaps we haven't learned to reframe, into a more healthier way of thinking. And all of these pieces of information, from the bottom up, the outside, and the top down, our brain is making meaning of all of them. And there's going to be differences there between boys and girls.
And by meaning, you basically mean the brain is changing the way it's wired, creating new connections, ending old connections, locking in beliefs based on this kind of three-part framework of the bottom up, which is like the physical environment that the body's in, the outside world, and you use the word flooded, which I freaking love, because that's how it feels.
It comes in through our senses, through our eyes and our ears.
Yes. And then the top down, which is the things that you're saying to yourself as you're trying to make sense of all of this, all of which impacts the way 100%. Your development operates and develops.
Yeah. And if something's not quite right, and many of those different kind of data inputs, any one of them could influence mood and depression and anxiety. So as I say, there's many shades of blue. So it could be someone's more depressed because maybe a girl is what we might say hormone sensitive. So we like to talk about hormones as being the cause for depression and the cause for anxiety. And that's why we start giving those girls that message from puberty, and it's really damaging. But we do know that there are some girls and women who are what we might call hormone sensitive. It's not like they've got bigger highs and lower lows of hormones. It's that there's something about their body which makes them a little bit more sensitive or vulnerable to those shifts.
Dr. Mackay, I should say that one of the reasons why I'm jumping on this term, hormone sensitivity, is because in the past, I have absolutely blamed bad period cramps, menopausal symptoms, all kinds of stuff on just being sensitive to hormones. And what I'm learning from you, and what I've learned as the mother to two daughters in their 20s that have had issues with hormones, is that we reach for the label, but you're teaching us that this is much more complicated than just a label. Because if you think about the three factors, there are things within your control, whether you're talking about, are you eating healthy? Are you getting sleep? Are you not drinking alcohol? Are you moving your body? Are you connected to positive friends? Look at some of these things in your control. Get a good night's sleep for a couple weeks. Stop drinking alcohol. Reconnect with your friends. Take better care of yourself and see if you're able to manage the ups and downs of life and your hormones a little bit better. I love that. And I love that you're making us smarter about the things that we can do. You mentioned sleep. Can you explain? You just kind of casually was like, well, sleep is the number one thing. Why is sleep and getting more sleep, other than social connection for the male and female brain, why is sleep so critical for the female brain?
And I think for the brain, for babies, teenagers, everyone, if we miss one night's sleep, everything is harder. It is so much harder to do all of the other things that we need to do, both on our to-do list, but also to look after ourselves. So we all know how bad we feel after one night's sleep being disrupted.
What are the repercussions? Like, what's happening when you sleep that's important for your brain health?
So there's a whole host of different things that kind of go on. So we know that we That's when our memories get consolidated during the day. Our brain's kind of sifting through and reshaping and kind of moving our memories and our experiences and what we've learned from short-term storage into long-term storage. And we know that, again, poor sleep is a risk factor for poor mental health, for poor brain health, increases your risk for almost every health condition. People who consistently have bad sleep have higher rates of mortality. So, it permeates every aspect of kind of our physiology and our psychology.
Makes sense. One of the things that I read in your book is that a woman gets her period about 450 times in her lifetime. And yet, you still don't quite understand how to deal with the fluctuating moods and the brain fog and all the other mental and emotional symptoms of PMS.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening in the female brain when you're going through your menstrual cycle?
Oh gosh, this is like we could do hours and hours on this one, Mel. So we have this brain and ovarian conversation that sort of starts at puberty and it goes maybe 450 times through your life, depending on how many pregnancies you have. And if you're on the pill, you can flatline it until menopause. In the last couple of years, there are these epic studies that have been done by women scientists who have started experimenting on themselves. They're like the Marie Curie of neuroscience. And so they are doing instead of waiting around for someone else to do the study, they're like, let's just do it on ourselves. So there's a couple of scientists who have said, right, I'm going to put myself in a brain scan every day to see what happens across the course of my menstrual cycle. And they're being very meticulous and very careful and taking blood samples so they know exactly which day they're on, what the different hormone levels are doing, and then they'll lie on the brain scanner and just lie there for a couple of hours. And what you can do is just look to see how the brain is just reacting when you're lying there doing nothing. So we see as you go into ovulation, when your estrogen kind of peaks, and a couple of days later, because the brain networks they kind of lag a little bit behind the hormone, because the way the hormone works on the cell as it interacts with your chromosomes and your DNA, it's not like this immediate millisecond response. It takes a couple of days. We see that those brain networks become far more kind of integrated and specialized when there's high estrogen, and then there's the estrogen kind of drops off, and then progesterone starts to rise in the days before your period. Different brain networks sort of start to interact more with each other. And for some women, that just might feel like nothing. But for other women, it might feel like an absolute emotional roller coaster, right? So the ebb and flow in everyone is going to be the same. The levels of hormones in everyone are going to be the same. But for some reason, in some people, that can feel like a roller coaster. Others, it barely feels like a gentle ripple.
What happens? What does the pill do to your brain? Like, what's happening in your brain?
So the same scientists that have lain in the brain scanner every day over the course of the month, they gave the study a very cute name. They called it 28andMe. And then they did a study of the oral contraceptive pill and called it 28 and OC, the oral contraceptive. Very epic science that's being done by these women. And then they went on the pill. And so we know that when you go on the oral contraceptive pill, which is an excellent form of contraception, that it flatlines your natural levels of hormones. And then you kind of get this high level of hormones from the pill, and it kind of depends on which formulation that you're taking.
Does it hurt your brain?
No, it's what we would see if we're looking at these networks is that the networks then flatline. Instead of ebbing and flowing with your natural levels of hormones are flat. The levels of hormones from the pill are flat, and so your brain waves just kind of go flat. And for some women, that might feel like stable mood. So we know some women go on the pill and they find it stabilizes their mood, particularly women that have extreme PMS or the extreme form of that PMDD. Some women find that going on the pill makes their hormones, stabilizes their hormones and makes their emotions feel stable. Other women might feel it, maybe their emotions are flattened. Because we've all got very, very different sort of responses and sensitivities to how hormones are interacting with our brain. And there does appear to be sort of a subset of women who are hormone sensitive.
And by hormone sensitive, what exactly do you mean as a neuroscientist?
Yeah. So and we don't know. I mean, we're still kind of at the very, very early stages of starting to understand what is going on in a brain that's responding to hormones, let alone what is going on in the brains of all of these different people who have different types of experiences and different types of emotions. And it's particularly emotions that we're interested in across the course of the menstrual cycle. So there are plenty of women who will say, yeah, look, I have PMS symptoms. I feel angry and irritable and grumpy and weepy, etc. before their period. There are also a subset of women who might feel particularly energized and maybe even a little bit frisky, kind of with the onloading of estrogen, so around ovulation. We've all got these different sorts of appears to be this different kind of baseline sensitivity to these hormone fluctuations. And it's not that the levels of hormones are any different. There's something in the way that we're responding to those hormones that are changing, but we don't really kind of know what it is. We do see these hints back to like girls who go through early puberty and perhaps even girls who've experienced early childhood trauma.
I can't believe you just said that, because I just wrote down on this piece of paper, I wonder if hormone sensitivity is correlated to adverse childhood experiences or sexual abuse.
It is.
It is?
And that's not an inevitable, if you experience that, you will be hormone sensitive, or if you are hormone sensitive, it is only due to that. But we see a tendency. And so there are some clinicians and researchers, particularly those working in the menopause space, who are starting to recognize the sensitivity and then kind of going all the way back to early childhood and asking women, well, you're in perimenopause, you've got depression, or you had postnatal depression, what was your early childhood like? It's not a direct causation in everyone all of the time.
It's a risk factor.
It is a risk factor. So we're starting to see that kind of emerge.
Well, it makes sense, because what you're teaching us is that you basically have taught us that you have all neurons in place, right? That 80% of the brain is developed by the age of 5, that every experience both in your body and flooding you from the outside and the way that you process it from the top down fashions the way that the brain is shaped, how it operates, what synapses come on, which ones disconnect. And so if you have adverse experiences and those adverse experiences flood you with hormones or neurochemicals, something is happening with the receptors in your body. And so it would make perfect logical sense that would be a risk factor in terms of the way that your body processes those exact same hormones later in life, or those neurochemicals.
Yeah.
I mean, it's logical.
And it kind of becomes cumulative as well. And that's why one researcher I spoke to says puberty is like an emotional blueprint for how we're going to respond to reproductive experiences later in life, because it's almost sort of setting that in place. So particularly, I think, parents or, caring adults around girls who are early, going through puberty early, we know that we can provide those kind of protective experiences and do the best we can to help those girls go through that kind of, entering puberty before their friends, that experience, kind of helping them through that. And there have been studies done, like kind of looking at those as interventions. And so it's like a really important time to kind of intervene, for one of a better way, because we will see, the kind of the repercussions. And one of the risk factors for depression at any point in life is, have you had a previous experience of depression?
How does pregnancy and motherhood change the brain?
Oh, one of my favorite topics, Mel. I've written a whole book on this. So an overarching statement I would make would be that pregnancy prepares the brain and mind for motherhood. And some studies have been done, and this was pretty much nothing was published on how women's brains change during pregnancy and motherhood until sort of around 2017. So it was
2017,
quite late. We knew what was happening in animals. There was a group in Spain, and again, there's some really great researchers out there working in women's health, and they're all women. And it's because they're the ones asking the questions. So it was back in 2009, these kind of 3 women were having this conversation and said, well, what would happen if we became pregnant? Let's go look at the research. There is no research. Let's do the study ourselves. Let's get pregnant and scan our own brains and try and find some friends to join in. And so that has this field of sort of the maternal brain or the neurobiology of matrescence, you could call it, has sort of exploded. And so they've scanned women's brains before their first pregnancy and after their first pregnancy, and more recently, another epic study done by a woman who's experimented on herself, scanned her brain all the way through pregnancy. And we see this enormous structural reorganization and rewiring of the brain through the course of a pregnancy.
What happens? Oh my God, you're literally like making another human being.
Is
the brain like figuring out how to talk to the mechanics of the baby?
Yeah. So they see, and this, when I first, the way I don't like to say this because people immediately think that something has gone wrong. We say we see a 4% volume loss in the brain during the course of a pregnancy, but we also see...
We gain it in the stomach, so it's fine.
We also see this in teenagers' brains and adolescent brains, right? They get slightly thinner as the brain is streamlining and refining and pruning and tuning its synapses. And we see this throughout the brain during the course, particularly of a first pregnancy. And it's primarily in those parts of the brain which are involved in social cognition. So
what does that mean?
What is someone else thinking? What is someone else feeling? How do I read the needs of somebody else? And how do I deploy the right behaviors to look after them?
Meaning you care more about it?
Who was the other person that you're going to be looking after at the end of a pregnancy? It's the little baby.
Yes.
So your brain is being reorganized to deploy the right types of behaviors to look after your baby. And that sounds very kind of like I'm describing what happens in an animal, but we've got a whole lot of data from, many other animals in the mammalian kingdom looking to see how their brains reshape and reorganize so they deploy the right types of maternal behaviors.
Well, if you don't, the baby's going to die.
Well, exactly. The same thing happens to us. So we become very, very tuned in. This new baby comes into the world and you can't really sort of think about anything else. All of your attention, particularly with your first baby, is solely focused in on that little baby. You almost can't think of anything else. No wonder you can't remember about the bananas or the keys or
how
your husband's lunch.
The labor was.
Yeah.
What is happening with your brain where you forget the pain of?
I think Mother Nature has made that a thing so that we just keep on having more babies. I remember my first childbirth and being really annoyed with my sister because she is one of those people that said it was good pain. It wasn't that bad. And I remember a few hours in when I started screaming for the epidural, she said it was going to be good pain and it's not. It really hurts. And then I remember the first contraction with my second son. I was like, oh, that's right. It's all coming back to me now. Second birth was easier. Actually, the second time around, motherhood is a whole lot easier because your brain has already gone through that process of reorganizing, reshaping, and then learning how to become a mother. So what happens when the baby's born? Your brain has gone into another sensitive phase of learning by experience because of all of the pregnancy hormones you've experienced. It's a little bit like puberty. And that is why sometimes we talk about matrescence as like adolescence, as this journey of becoming a mother. So through pregnancy, your brain is reshaping and reorganizing so you can become a mother. And it makes that learning curve perhaps a little less steep. You'll still need to figure your baby out and learn how to take care of it, but your brain is kind of primed to react and respond and almost to focus solely in on that new little baby and take care of it.
Is there anything that's happening in the male brain while the female brain is undergoing all this?
Yeah, so the woman in Spain, this is the first study that was ever done looking at this, because they were clever and smart women, they said, let's look at the fathers. So these were heterosexual couples. Let's look at the fathers of these babies as well, scan their brains before and after their partner's pregnancy and look to see if their brains change. And in comparison to the mother's brains, their brains did not change.
At all?
At all. However, if you just look just at the males and you kind of increase get more men involved who have just had babies, their partners have just had babies, and just scan their brains, we do see some tiny little changes, not at all in comparison to the women, but tiny changes within those men's brains, which are based on how involved they are with childcare. And, some men are there for the act of conception only, some fathers, and are never seen again, and other fathers are the primary caregiver. So you would expect if a dad is the primary caregiver, his brain is going to change a whole lot more than the dad that was just there for conception only.
So let's talk about menopause, because I would imagine that...
We're not going to talk about baby brain and forgetfulness?
Oh, sure. I forgot. I'm not even pregnant, for crying out loud.
Only because that's...
What do you mean? Why is there forgetfulness when you have a baby?
Well, lots of people talk about like mummy brain and baby brain, and you become forgetful.
Because we're exhausted.
Well, yeah. Well, so 4 out of 5 women during pregnancy and early motherhood will say yes. And I didn't experience it, which is why I wanted to write the book, because I thought I didn't know it was a thing.
Okay.
It wasn't a story I'd ever heard, and I didn't experience it. And I was like, I wonder if there's something in that. Like,
is there a neurological thing?
Just making it all about me. Well, we know our brain is completely reorganized to attend and focus on the baby. And memory depends on attention, right? So what information you take in and what you filter out. And so when you're entirely focused in on your new baby, you're not going to remember all of the other things. But because we have been told that if you've got a female brain, you add some hormones in and you add motherhood to the mix, you're kind of, dysfunctional and you're on the decline and, all of the potential things that can go wrong. And of course, we could experience postnatal depression. Of course, we could experience postnatal anxiety. But we know from the research that women who are experiencing less overall well-being over that amount of time have less social support. I mean, no one's getting sleep, right? They are much more likely to describe their experience as what we would call baby brain than women who are well, socially supported, don't have postnatal depression, are kind of doing okay. It's not women's brains that are letting them down. It's the social support that they're not receiving to parent that is letting them down. But we have persisted with this story that there's something neurologically wrong with us when we become mothers.
So we shouldn't call it that anymore, right?
No, it's
because
not.
That's actually the wrong term. Because if you call it baby brain, you're basically blaming your brain. And what you're saying is, no. First of all, your brain's working right, because any energy you have, your brain is being ordered to focus on this human being whose survival is dependent on you. So the fact that you are focused on the caregiving is what you're designed to do. It's working correctly. The problem isn't baby brain. The problem is you don't have support.
Yeah. And, you will have heard of like the emotional labor or the cognitive load of motherhood or just being a woman and having to do all of the things. And people love talking about a supermum, right? Because she can kind of do everything. Give it to her. She can do it all. And if she drops a ball or something goes wrong, well, it's okay because she can just blame her baby brain. And then everyone goes, oh, well, it's her brain's fault.
Yeah, you can still cook dinner and do the night feeding, and I'm going to sleep for 12 hours while you do all that, and it's your baby brain. Yeah. You'll be fine in 9 months.
It's not her brain. And we've got this amazing research looking again, like I talked earlier about imaging brain networks, and we look at mothers' brains, and their brains are more flexible and efficient and responsive.
Wow.
But we persist on always telling the dysfunctional story instead of looking at the strengths.
And what is the best intervention? Is it getting support and sleep?
Yeah.
Is it prior? The second you start saying, I've got baby brain, say, nope, look where you need support.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shouldn't have to be up to the mum to like be told to look for support, should it?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So let's talk about menopause, because another period in a woman's life where we tend to talk about brain fog is when we're going through menopause. What is happening to the female brain when we dry up like a raisin?
Well, that brain ovarian conversation that's been going on, we've talked about puberty, we've talked about menstrual cycle, we've talked about pregnancy. It kind of starts to falter a little bit, and it's been, kind of going on really nicely for many years. And then what happens is menopause actually starts in our ovaries, right? We run out of eggs. Ovaries start to give up. Sometimes, they ovulate. Sometimes they don't. The brain is up there listening, going, you didn't ovulate. ovulate. The ovaries go, okay, there's huge amounts of estrogen. The brain goes, not that much. The ovaries go, okay, sorry. So, we kind of get this roller coastering, and that's what we would call perimenopause. And then our brain is starting to respond to that massive roller coastering. We know kind of what happens with our bodies. We get irregular periods. We can get really heavy periods. We can get none, and then they come back and it lasts for 2 weeks, and all of the things that are going on. And our brain is kind of in the middle, trying to adapt and respond and flex and kind of make the most of this sort of situation that it's in. Brain fog is one of the words that we use as kind of umbrella word that we would use to describe this kind of constellation of symptoms, perhaps not dissimilar to baby brain again, but this time there's probably a little bit more of a biological cause behind it. But we're not sure exactly what is this kind of nice, neat biological pathway. And I love a biological mechanism. We know that the estrogen's kind of roller coastering, and then after menopause, it's flatlining. We're pretty sure we know how the brain causes hot flashes and how that's estrogen is involved there.
How does estrogen cause hot flashes?
So we've got the hypothalamus, that part of the brain that's receiving all the data from our body. So it's also, it regulates our body temperature. And the thermostat in the hypothalamus is almost set by estrogen for some reason. The brain evolved to have that thermostat to be set by estrogen. When the estrogen starts doing its crazy thing, the thermostat gets really narrow. So the top goes, so it gets much narrower. So your body temperature only needs to rise a tiny bit to kind of hit the upper level. And your brain goes, it's hot in here, it's hot in here. And it sends 2 signals out to your body to cool down. Physiological signals, like you go really red and you sweat, because it's in an emergency situation. And then also for you to go, oh, I'm hot, and therefore I will behave in a way to cool myself down or take my jumper off. When you are asleep at night, your body's like doing the whole sweating thing, but sometimes you've got the covers on, but you're asleep. And so then your brain needs to wake you up. And some women describe it, and in my experience, being 50, it feels a little bit like you've had a fright, like you wake up and you've gone, ugh. It's not like just waking up normally. You can almost feel the adrenaline going through your body because your brain has had to wake you up to behave in a way to also cool you down because the sweating wasn't quite doing enough.
Yes. By that point, it's like a puddle on my side of the bed.
Yes.
And then I'm like, how was I asleep when these sheets are so wet? And why am I so warm? Yes.
Yeah. And we know a couple of things. We know if we put estrogen back in with menopause hormone therapy or HRT, whatever you're going to call it, we know that kind of reset that thermostat. And we know that that's putting the estrogen back in is one of the best treatments for vasomotor symptoms. What we're seeing, and, some of the ideas are that we know that body temperature and sleep are really intimately entwined. And every menopausal woman knows that, right? You might not know that if you're a young teenage fella, right? You might not have figured that out. But we all know that. About 70% of the hot flashes that we have overnight, and so the studies have found about 70% of the hot flashes will wake us up. You might not remember waking up, but your sleep's being disrupted. But even if you're not waking up, that nice sort of, those sleep studies that you see where you got into deep sleep and then up into REM and down again, that just gets that nice, neat architecture just gets disrupted. So if that happened for one night, you would feel a bit rubbish. If that happens for a week and a month and for years on end, well, what's the inevitable consequence of sleep disruption?
Memory.
Do you just feel you feel terrible? You're more vulnerable to depression. You're more vulnerable to memory problems. That's perhaps one of the reasons why we are seeing problems with what we would call brain fog.
Well, Dr. Mackay, here's what I'm getting from you. Ready?
Okay.
What I love about the way that you're teaching us and the rigor with which you're explaining the research and the science is that for somebody like me who's just a person going through this, and then I blame it on menopause. I blame it on my hormones. I blame it on estrogen.
Yeah.
You basically are saying that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
However, if you look at the female brain and you look at what's happening when your body is going from this bottom up biological change and the hormones are changing, your brain is responding.
Yes.
And one of the big things that happens is it's interrupting your sleep because you're basically overcooking yourself as you're sleeping. And because that's happening over and over and over again,
Yeah.
whether or not you remember waking up, the brain fog isn't, quote, necessarily because you're lacking estrogen. The brain fog is what's accumulating
It's
as
like a
your
domino.
body's. Yes.
It's like a domino effect. And with that constant sympathetic activation multiple times a night, that's going to have a couple of different consequences. We see consequences for cardiovascular health, and the same we would see with sleep apnea. If someone like their sympathetic activation goes off to wake them up so they start breathing again, and we know that that's really bad for cardiovascular health, and cardiovascular health is not great. Bad cardiovascular health means bad brain health. So we've got that kind of consequence. And we also see with repeated sympathetic activation for perhaps no reason that we, it's not like something out there was giving us a fright, but repeated sympathetic activation makes you more hypervigilant. And when you're more hypervigilant on top of sleep deprivation, you're much more vulnerable to anxiety. And it's almost like your sympathetic nervous system's been activated multiple times. And so it becomes more hypervigilant. So you feel anxious, even though there's not necessarily anything that has changed a lot. So there's a whole lot of different consequences there. So that could kind of feed in to the brain fog.
So how can women protect or strengthen their cognitive health as they age?
Yeah. So there's some pretty clear data which has come out. I believe I wrote it down earlier. So there's some pretty clear data that has come out, and the entire pool of data that we've gathered from all over the world looking at Alzheimer's disease risk is kind of analysed and put together every year by this Lancet Commission of Alzheimer's disease, and they put this information out. And what they're saying currently, based on the data to date, is about 45% of cases of dementia and Alzheimer's disease could be prevented by intervening with various types of lifestyle factors.
Wow.
And this is like for males and females. So that's quite high, right? 55% are probably biological things we can't necessarily do much about.
Okay, but 45%.
Yeah, and so 5% of that is early childhood education. And that's quite a lot, right? So the more years you stay in education and the more enriched childhood experiences you have, the more protected you are. Wow. And that's perhaps where we see some of that gender inequality in some parts of the world. And that could almost explain that incidence, that inflow differing between males and females in countries where there's the gender inequality in childhood. And bearing in mind, we could be looking at people in their 90s, so we're having to look at what their lives were like 90, 80 years ago. Mm-hmm. Midlife is really interesting because we know there is this factor which is responsible for about 7% of cases of Alzheimer's globally, and no one talks about it because it's deeply unsexy, and it is hearing loss.
Wait, what? Hearing loss?
Yeah. Untreated hearing loss in midlife.
Huh.
So we know all of, the causes of the hearing loss, like listening to too loud music and, industrial hearing loss, etc. And then perhaps, you're just getting older. But what is it about hearing loss that is causing Alzheimer's disease? And we think partly it's around, well, what happens when someone loses their hearing? They can't kind of interact with other people. They withdraw socially. They might withdraw from work. They kind of shut down. And remember, we're constantly receiving information about the world through our senses, through our eyes and our ears, primarily as humans. And so it's just kind of cutting off one of these kind of sensory inputs that our brain is receiving. So that's, and no one's talking about that because it's not very kind of fun and sexy to say, go and get a hearing aid.
It makes sense, though.
There are people that are out there saying that, but I don't think that they're getting the kind of attention they deserve.
Dr. Mackay, what is the next frontier of research in women's brain health that excites you the most?
Well, now I always say women's brain health is no longer a niche. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what, comes out of that. Like parent numbers data, it's very nerdy, but I think that's what's going to give us the answers.
Well, you are proving that women are in fact good at math and science. If you could give the person listening one science-backed recommendation for caring for the female brain, what would it be? What's the most important thing?
Besides sleep, you can get that sorted. You're halfway there. I think when I first sort of started moving into women's brain health research, I've been doing neuroscience for a long time. I thought it was all going to be about hormones. That was going to be what it's about. But I think it doesn't matter at which life stage you are considering, whether you're looking at infancy, childhood. We talked about girls going through puberty. We know what teenagers need, new mothers. As we are aging, it's really about other people. And we have our brain is like a social organ, and what it needs at every age and every life stage is social interactions with other people. And I think we tend to forget how important relationships are as determinants of health. And we have that real tendency, as I said, from puberty to just blame the hormones and to only look for what's going wrong and not looking at how I think social infrastructure or architecture can protect and promote that resilience and that adaptability. So I think other people are the key to a healthy brain.
One of the things that I think is also damaging that is out in the zeitgeist is that women are better at relationships than men, and women are more social than men, and men do not have support structures. And while that may be true, the presumption is it's because they're not capable of creating it. And is that recommendation also true of the male brain?
Yeah, that's true for humans. I mean, I've got teenage sons, and I mean, oh gosh, I feel like I'll cry thinking about them being sad and lonely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what humans need. But I think we do tend to, particularly with girls and women, zoom in on the hormones, and we can't necessarily always do a lot about that, and that kind of removes the agency or the ability to kind of look beyond that to other people. And we just have so much research that often the strongest determinant of a health outcome is other people.
Dr. Mackay, what's your parting words?
I was thinking about this because all of the work that I talk about in all my books and teach and I write about, that's not research that I've done. It is me talking about the work that other researchers have done because, I don't work as an academic neuroscientist anymore. I'm a science communicator. And I just have so much to thank all of those researchers out there doing the work. Like so many of them, like some of them are like women of steel who are asking these hard questions, battling for the funding and then, seeking the answers. And it takes a really long time to do good science well. It takes time and money, and you have to be meticulous. And sometimes it's nuanced, and sometimes it's mixed, and sometimes the answer is still we don't know. And so I think my parting word is I just want to acknowledge them and thank them and cheerlead them, because I couldn't do what I do. I'm just talking about the work that they've done. So yeah, my parting word to them is just to say thank you.
I love that. I'm going to say thank you too. And is there any final thing you want to say to the person who has just spent all this time learning from you that you want them to know about their brain or the future that's possible for them?
I think we have been told for centuries the story that women's brains are unstable and chaotic and dysfunctional and other than male. And our brains are actually resilient and adaptable. And that's not just me saying that because it's a nice thing to say. It's really and truly what the neuroscience is showing. And so I know that there's gaps. I know that, not everyone has, the best life experiences, but the research is sort of showing us that there is a really good news story. And if we look for the strengths and we also tell ourselves the good stories, then we may be able to influence some more positive health outcomes along the way.
Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for
inviting me. I learned so much from you today. No, seriously. Yeah. I feel my brain feels like popcorn is popping all over the place because you challenged me to think about this topic completely differently. It's very empowering to think that between your ears and on top of your neck is this incredible organ that is constantly adapting and has this crazy intelligent design. And when you understand the fact that it's only just responding to the input physically and from the world, you actually hand us the keys to think more critically about how to add positive input, how to stop buying the lies that we're being told about the way that women are or girls are or men are or boys are, and to understand that it can always adapt and change. And that's a very positive and encouraging thing. I just feel so much smarter. And I really appreciate you hopping on a plane, you coming all this way, you pouring into us. Thank you for the work that you're doing. This has been amazing. And I also want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to something that is going to help you understand your mind and unlock the power of it. And in case no one else tells you today, I wanted to be sure to tell you that I love you and I believe in you. And I believe in your ability to not only create a better life, but with a better understanding of the way that your mind works, I think you can unlock the power of it. And I can't wait to see what you do with everything that you learned today. So thanks for being here, and I will see you in the very next episode. I'll be waiting to welcome you in the moment you hit play. I'll see you there. And thank you for watching all the way to the end. I love being here with you on YouTube. Thank you for sharing this episode with people that you care about. Thank you for being a subscriber, because it really is a way that you can support us in bringing you extraordinary experts. I know what you're thinking. Mel, stop talking. Tell me what to watch next. You got it. This is the very next episode you're going to love. And I'll be waiting to welcome you in the moment you hit play. I'll see you there.
I had an interesting upbringing, failed out of high school with a 0.9 GPA, on welfare, string of minimum wage jobs. I had no self-esteem. Recognizing rock bottom, something had to change. And I happened upon a book.
Today's conversation about authenticity and the lies that you've been told is going to be life-changing. Dr. Todd Rose, expert researcher with a PhD from Harvard, is here to teach you how to reconnect with your true self so you can live the life you deserve.
Here's the important part about authenticity. It is a process. It's not a destination. There's no such thing as you could put all the work you want in right now and you're like, I'm done. That's not how it works. A flourishing life is one where you grow and change and discover. And once you realize how many people end up copying you, you'll see just how profoundly we're affected by what we believe other people believe and expect of us. The only truly bad decision is when you violate your own values and aspirations to conform to a group that didn't want that from you in the first place. Nobody wins. We're the first generation now as a society that has to deal with collective illusions at scale because of social media.
What is a collective illusion?
Collective illusion is groupthink, but you're wrong about the group. Almost 2/3 of people are admitting that they are self-silencing right now. You cannot trust your brain to tell you what your group thinks anymore. It's about authenticity. Authenticity is the kryptonite of collective illusions. Probably the single most important study we've ever done that I think has the most implications for society and for individuals is...
Hey, it's your friend Mel, and welcome to the Mel Robbins Podcast. Hey, it's Mel. Before we get into this incredible episode about living a more authentic life, my team was showing me 57% of you who watch here on YouTube are not subscribed yet. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any of the episodes of the Mel Robbins Podcast that we post here on YouTube. And it also lets me know that you enjoy the guests and the content that we're bringing to you for free, because I want to make sure you don't miss a thing. And boy, are you here for an incredible conversation today. So thanks for hitting subscribe. All right, you ready? Good. Let's dive in. Please help me welcome Dr. Todd Rose to the Mel Robbins Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you.
Me too.
I'm really excited for so many reasons. And here's where I want to start. How is my life going to be different?
If you understand and internalize the ideas we're going to talk about today, you're going to be more confident. You're going to live more authentically, which is going to lead to greater life satisfaction, happiness. But more importantly, your relationships are going to be better, and you're going to have a deeper sense of belonging to the groups that matter most to you.
That's a big promise. I'm really excited for that. I actually believe you.
That's
No,
good.
I do believe you. I believe you. And what I'm excited about is I have this sense that we are living in a world where we all feel so divided from one another. And yet I hold firmly to this belief that the vast majority of us are way more similar and believe way more of the same things and want a lot of the same things than we actually are led to believe in the
Yeah.
world right now.
And you're 100% correct. What we do at my think tank Populous, we do what's called private opinion research. So
What is private opinion
it's-
research?
So polling, it's all public.
Oh,
And it has all the social pressure, right?
okay.
There's a right answer. And so it turns out everybody's misrepresenting their views right now.
You feel like there's this big cost if you just don't go with the flow, or you just don't agree, or you just don't do what you think everybody else wants you to do, whether it's your family or at work or with your friend group. And so where I want to start is you write a lot in your best-selling book, Collective Illusions, about the fact that we are fundamentally wired to conform. What does that mean, Todd?
Yeah, this is really important to bring up because when we talk about conformity, it kind of has like a negative connotation, right?
Yes.
Like nobody wants to admit they conform to something.
Yes.
But here's what's important.
Mhm.
We are hardwired to belong to groups.
Okay.
Evolutionarily, this is how we survive. And that belonging can lead to conformity when we feel like we have to distort who we are to get that belonging. And if you don't mind, let me give you an example.
Please.
I'm going to tell you about what I think is my favorite study ever because I can't believe he got funded to do it.
Okay.
A colleague of mine in the Netherlands back in 2009 was a little skeptical about this conformity, like how deep it really went. And so he said, well, what's the most subjective thing I could possibly imagine and see if conformity exists there? So he decided it was who you think is good looking. Because look, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Yep.
So, and there's no social pressure to be like, you should think they're attractive because I do.
Yeah.
So he does this clever study. He puts people in fMRI scanners and he does a version of hot or not.
Okay.
Really, like this is why I can't believe he got funded. He gets people, he shows them a couple hundred faces and he asks them to rate them on their attractiveness from 1 to 5. 1, no thank you. 5 being yes, please. Right? Which, by the way, you do that kind of stuff on the street, you're a creep.
Yes.
You do it in a scanner, you're a scientist. But here's what's wild. So you're in that scanner and you see a face and you say, well, I think that's a 5, pretty attractive. What happens next is instantly you are shown another number, which is supposed to represent the average score of everyone who's done this task before you.
Okay, so if I just ranked somebody a 5,
All of a
and then
sudden-
all of a sudden I'm shown, well, everybody else said
Says
they
it's
were
a-
3.
Yes, exactly. Right. And then we're going to watch what happens in your brain. And here's the thing. That group number was completely made up. There was no other group.
Okay.
It's just you. And it was engineered so that half the time you're told that you and your group are lockstep. You said 5, the group said 5.
Okay.
Right. And on some of the trials, it makes it wildly different. You said 5, the group said 1.
Oh.
Now, here's what's crazy. On the trials where you and your group are aligned, it triggers what we call a reward signal in your brain. It's the same areas that hard drugs activate. And it's meant to tell you, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. This is amazing, right? On the trials where you were like 5 and they said 1, it triggers what's called an error signal in your brain. It's this cascading electrical signal that disrupts memory, attention, everything. It's meant to get you to stop because something you're doing is wrong and you might be in danger. So this is what happens to your brain, but that's not even the most interesting thing. The clever part was then at the end of this study, you're in the task, they come in and say, oh, I'm so sorry. For some reason, the equipment didn't record your responses.
Uh-huh.
Would you mind just quickly doing the task again? We're not going to record your brain. Just quickly do the task again. They randomize the couple hundred pictures. They get you to rate them again. Lo and behold, most people moved their scores to align with the group and they didn't even know they did it.
Wow.
You interview them after, they're like, no, that didn't affect me at all. So when I say it's hardwired, that's what I mean. Even as something as subjective as attractiveness, we just want to be with our groups. And there's a lot that we'll do to maintain that group alignment.
I think it's fascinating that there is an error signal in your brain, that when you recognize that you're not conforming with group think or group look or group opinion, that automatically signals that you're on the outside and you need to stop. And I want to give you another example to see if I'm tracking with this, because this just happened to me the other night. Like a lot of people, I am starting to really care more about my health. And one of the things I am cutting way back on is alcohol. And so I have this rule with myself that I'm just not going to drink during the week.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward to last night. I'm out at a restaurant after work, and one of my colleagues turns to me and says, I think I might have a glass of wine. You want to have a glass of wine? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain, using the research, what just happened? Because here's the thing. I know I was going to go in there and order a Diet Coke or a club soda or whatever. The second somebody asked me, hey, you want to have something? It's like I make a decision, reflexive.
Didn't even contemplate it. You just went with it.
Well, Todd, you wrote the book on this.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example of why this is a really important thing to understand that is happening in your physiology and your neurology and biology. And so what's happening?
It's coming back to that need to belong that we just talked about, and the possibility of conformity there. Because the norm in our society is when you go out socially, you drink, and people that don't drink aren't fun. That's the stereotype. At the same time, you don't want to go against the grain.
Yes.
Right?
But do you know what's interesting? If I had said to my colleague, I'm just not drinking during the week right now, I don't think I'm going to have anything. You know what they probably would have said? I don't think I would have anything either.
And that's the thing, is because you don't have the simple tips and tricks that you can use to not put yourself in that, well, I don't want to come off as something I don't think I am. I think I'm fun. I think I'm social. I like to hang out with people. So something like, you know what? I decided to take a month off. Or, you know what? I decided I'm not drinking on weekdays, because then it doesn't say I'm not someone who drinks, right?
Right.
It's just, I've made that choice. And you'd be shocked how many people, like the person said, hey, I'm having a drink. We're at a table with a bunch of people, and we're like, okay, fine. And then everyone sees two people do it. And you're like, okay, there's a lot of pressure building as they come to you.
Yes.
And what will you have, sir? Like, I'll have what they're having,
Yes.
Is just the ability to say something like, you know what? I've decided to take a month off or whatever, and no one's going to say something's wrong with you.
No.
But what you'll do is you'll give them permission to do the same thing and try it out. It's amazing. And once you realize how many people end up copying you, you'll see just how profoundly we're affected by what we believe other people believe and expect of us.
What is happening in that moment where you say, okay, I'll have what they're having?
Yep.
Like, what's happening in your brain?
So remember we talked about that reward response?
Yep.
So your brain has what's called an anticipated reward response. We know that when we're aligned with our group, it feels really good and we want that. It's not quite like drug addiction, but it's in that ballpark where once you're addicted to that drug, you're chasing the drug. Everything is about, I want that feeling again.
Of belonging. And we're talking about a deeper sense that's wired in you.
It's so deep, and it's really important. And again, I want to say, there's nothing wrong with wanting to belong.
Yeah.
You should want to belong. And you just have to understand when that need to belong tips into being controlled or manipulated, or bottom line, just leads you to do things that go against your own judgment. That's when you start making really bad decisions.
I'm really excited because I feel like this is one of those hidden levers that we don't realize is just operating in the background. And when you understand what you're dealing with, you have so much more power over it.
That's right. After I was booked to be on the show, I actually dug in and read your book, and I got to tell you, there are so many parallels. When we get into all the tools later on, we'll be able to dig into that a little bit more, because there's just so much overlap. I'm excited to dig in.
That's a huge compliment. We'll get into the tools later, but there's so much more about your research that I want to make sure that we fully get to and understand. One of the terms I'd love to have you talk a little bit about is this term collective illusions. It's the title of your best-selling book. Mm-hmm. Can you define in very plain terms, what is a collective illusion?
Collective illusion is groupthink, but you're wrong about the group. So let me unpack that just a little bit. It formally is a phenomenon where most people in a group go along with something they don't privately agree with, simply because they incorrectly think that most other people agree with it.
Okay, give me an example.
So one of the most sticky collective illusions of all that's been around for multiple decades that we've tracked is this binge drinking in college.
Okay.
So kids leave home, they go to a new place. They're like, what does it mean to be a college student here?
Yep.
And they all think that most kids binge drink. And so they go to a party and they end up binge drinking when in reality, in private, we know as a matter of fact, most college kids are deeply skeptical about binge drinking. They know it's bad, but it's what they feel like they need to do to belong, to be a college student.
Wow.
And it turns out, was what we can talk about later, no amount of trying to tell them how bad drinking is works. In fact, it propagates the illusion. It's
that it's a problem and that everybody's doing it.
Yeah. Why would all the administration put all these posters up telling us about the dangers of binge drinking if people weren't binge drinking? And so it ends up fueling the illusion.
Yes.
And so what you need is to have social proof where you have popular kids, other people just being like, I don't binge drink. Why would I binge drink? You can't lecture or try to persuade. You have to just reveal. But this happens all the time. What's crazy is the phenomenon of collective illusions we've known about for about 100 years in research. It goes back further, obviously, because the emperor's new clothes is about collective illusions. Right?
Unpack that for the person that doesn't know what the emperor's new clothes is.
It's the story of the parable of like the emperor gets convinced by some huckster that they can spin the most beautiful clothing ever made. And it's so fine that it's invisible to everyone except for people who are worthy of their station in life. And the emperor's like, obviously I'm worthy of it. So they make up this, and they fake like they're putting it on him. And he's like, well, obviously I can see it because if I say I can't see it, then I must not be worthy of being in charge of everything.
Yes.
And then everybody around him wants power and wants to be close to it. So they don't want to say you're buck naked, right? And then the king's prancing around, going outside.
Naked.
All the crowds line up. They're cheering because no one wants to say it. And then one little kid is like, why are you naked? The innocence of the child to be just asked the obvious question, and then the illusion shatters. So obviously this has been a problem in humanity for a very long time. What's interesting is up until just recently, the number of illusions, collective illusions that have harmed us as a society were pretty small.
Yes.
But you put it into the social media age.
Yes.
And it's just exploded to the point where now name anything that matters in life. It's like coin toss whether or not you're just wrong about what your community believes now.
Well, I also think like the experience we all have when you go online and it looks like every single person. I mean, I'm a 57-year-old woman, so it's largely menopause and interior design and health products. Like every single person is taking the exact same brand of supplement. Every single person is wearing this exact makeup line.
Yeah.
Every single person is buying this particular couch. And I feel like, oh my God, I'm missing out. Like everybody has that thing.
Yep.
And it does feel like it's gotten worse. And then my daughter was talking today, like, well, I'm getting targeted for a cellulite foam roller that I'm about to buy because it looks like everybody that, I follow online is using it. And so what are some of the collective illusions that you can point to in day-to-day life that we may not be aware that that's what that is?
Well, let's hit on those. But when we think about how is it that we could end up being so wrong about the groups that matter so much to us? Like, it's kind of weird that would be true, right?
Yes.
Let me show you like two things. One, how they happen in day-to-day life.
Yes.
Without anybody trying to manipulate you. And then let's talk about what social media does at the societal level.
Great.
So, and I think people will have some similar experience because I can remember the first time that I actually experienced a collective illusion.
When
it was back. So growing up, I was kind of a problematic child, which I'm sure we can talk about, and didn't really fit in except for my grandmother, who was like my second mom.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I was with her, I could just be myself and I was good enough.
Mm.
And she decided, they were very, very poor. She had me come and sleep over as a kid once a month, just me. Literally no other grandkids got this. And when I was there, she'd make a bologna sandwich in her little house, little tiny kitchenette, would play Yahtzee together, and we'd just talk. And I could share anything with her, stuff I couldn't tell my parents, whatever. It was like literally amazing. It was this oasis for me in a really tough environment. We've been sleeping over. Then one time she says, hey, good news. I'm taking you to Sizzler, right? Your grandpa and I, this steakhouse, this all you can eat steakhouse. And I was like, I don't really want to go to, it's noisy there. Like, I just want to be here. But I knew it meant a lot to them.
Yeah.
So I went with it. And that's what we started doing. Instead of just playing Yahtzee, we'd go to Sizzler. And that went on for 6 years. Okay. So in 2015, we found out she was dying. And I went back to Utah where I was born to say goodbye to her. And I was preparing, I was like, my last conversation I'm ever going to have with this woman that meant the world to me. And I'm holding her hand and we're talking about a lot of things. And I thought, I want to just let her know how transformative those sleepovers were to me. And I said, Grandma, I just want to tell you all those times sleeping over. She's like, barely can get a word out. And she says, she touches my arm. She says, I know what mattered most to you. It was going to Sizzler. And I was like, wait, what? Like, and I didn't have the heart to be like, I didn't like that at all. Right. But she said, just to be honest, your grandpa and I didn't really like going to Sizzler, but we knew it meant a lot to you. So I'm sitting there thinking, wait, we all ended up going to Sizzler once a month for 6 years because we all thought we all wanted to go to Sizzler when nobody actually did. Again, I didn't have the heart to tell her on her deathbed. She could have had me for a bologna sandwich. But that kind of like, nobody was manipulating anyone. We care about each other. We want each other to be happy, and we can misread each other. And then just like the drink example, nobody wants to question it, and we just keep doing it.
Well, you're making my wheels spin now, where I'm sitting here thinking, what are we all continuing to do as a family?
Yes.
That we all think we're supposed to be doing. Like it could even be something as simple as we've always had the same meal for a certain holiday. Nobody actually likes it. Yeah. Why are we not just doing something different and talking about it?
I promise you, do me one favor, is just go to your family or your significant other and think about the things you do on a routine basis.
Okay. So give us some examples.
I have friends that have every Friday, we have salmon night.
Yep.
And we watch a movie. Maybe everybody wants to do that. It could be true. It's these basic day-to-day things. And just say, hey, honestly, do we still like doing this? You know what I mean? And just ask it. You will be shocked at how many of these, someone's go, well, actually, if you give me the permission to be honest, like, actually, maybe we could shake that up a bit. So if illusions can happen amongst like tightly knit relationships, it's not surprising that they can happen in a country of 300 million people at a societal level. Think about, you have all these identities and you're tied to these groups that matter to you, but they consist of people you're probably never going to meet. And you have to guess, what does that group believe? You know what I mean? So I can know what it is I'm trying to align to.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about your brain that is just crazy, is how your brain estimates what your group believes. Because you'd imagine, given how important it is with conformity and belonging, that you'd have some sophisticated way that your brain calculates, like, on average, this is what my group believes. Now, there's a shortcut your brain takes. No kidding. Your brain assumes the loudest voices, repeated the most, are the majority.
The loudest voices, repeated the most, are the majority.
Even when you know it's not true. Even intellectually, oh, this is just Mel telling me this over and over again. That's, your brain is keeping score this way. So it must have worked. You've evolved to have this shortcut, but you put that into a social media age.
Yes.
Okay. So here's a stat that blows my mind.
Okay.
If you take what was Twitter, which is now X, research has shown that 80% of all the content on that platform is generated by only 10% of the users.
80% of the content you're reading on X is generated by 10%? 10%.
And here's the trick. Pew Research has found that 10% isn't remotely representative of the general public. They are extreme on almost every social issue. But you can see the problem here. Let's say 10% of people hold some view, but you think it's 80%.
I think that's what's happened.
That error signal kicks in. Unless you're willing to override that and go against what you think your group believes, what do? You end up self-silencing, you say nothing, or worse, you start saying what you think people want to hear so you can be part of the group. And when enough people self-silence, the only people left are the people on the fringes.
The 10% that are the loudest, repeating everything that we then say, oh,
this is what
everybody that's part of that party must believe that. And
Clearly
everybody that follows that person must believe
Correct.
that.
So
and what you're basically saying is, The research is very conclusive. That's absolutely not
true.
The
And
loudest voices don't represent the
they
majority.
don't. In fact, they almost never do. They wouldn't have to be so loud, right? If you knew everybody agreed with you, you don't have to say much. But you can see how this is where then you get these societal level collective illusions because we're self-silencing. And our data on this is we have more private opinion data on the American public than any organization, I'm quite certain of. Almost 2/3 of people are admitting that they are self-silencing right now. That means withholding things that matter to them because they think other people disagree. Like, this is a very dangerous place to be when we can't even be honest with each other. And so the problem with that is as these illusions form, okay, so now I'm thinking, wow, most people, like, what happened? What happened to society? Like, am I crazy or did everybody else seem to go crazy? And it's like you start feeling alienated from your group, isolated, a little bit resentful that you're having to self-silence. And we see this in the data. You start losing trust in other people and life gets much worse for you, but it also gets much worse for the rest of us because as a result, we end up with this false polarization, right? We feel like we're completely divided and it becomes self-fulfilling.
Yes.
We lose trust in each other and we become resentful.
Now, I want to make sure that I'm unpacking this because I think this is so important what you're saying. And it is so important that you really take in, and I'm going to now call you Dr. Todd Rose, what he is saying about the data, because this is something that I have held in my heart that has made me very sad and has also made me pull back and feel discouraged. I've bought into the collective illusion of what the loudest voices, you're saying it's the 10%, the fringe, are saying. And I have presumed that the majority of people believe in this.
We're the first generation now as a society that has to deal with collective illusions at scale because of social media. Like, you cannot trust your brain to tell you what your group thinks anymore. You can't. And that's a hard thing to overcome. And when you put it into social media environment, even if there's no bad actors, just the dynamics of that, the loudest voices will guarantee that you're going to be wrong the longer you spend time on there.
Yes.
But it gets even worse. So my organization has partnered with other organizations. We've been studying the way in which foreign entities that are trying to disrupt us have built bot armies. Russia, China, they have millions of bots, some of them AI enabled now. And we often think when it's propaganda and manipulation that they're just spreading disinformation. It's not what they do at all.
What do they do?
The new form of propaganda is the ability to manufacture a collective illusion.
Meaning like literally like put you in the matrix of what they want you to believe by
intentionally
just
targeting, especially Gen Z, to convince them that their communities believe things they don't. And that need to belong kicks in. I mean, we're talking about, so we know on social media writ large that roughly 1/4 of all the interactions you ever have are with bots and you don't know it.
Say that again.
1/4, and that's conservative, 1/4 of all your interactions on social media are with bots and you don't know it. And with AI enabled bots, you wouldn't be able to tell. They are so sophisticated. So you just have to be careful to know if you just get to that point and understand this concept of a collective illusion, right?
Right.
Groupthink, but you're wrong about the group. So why would you conform? Like, if you conform to something your group doesn't want, you're destroying the group you actually care about.
So let me just unpack this. I really do think this is critical, that 1/4 of the content that you interact with online are bots and that you believe that's conservative.
Yeah.
That the bots are programmed to convince you to believe something that the majority of people do not agree with.
Yeah.
And I also will extrapolate that is why it is more important than ever that you stop conforming and you actually take a step back and you deeply connect with what's important to you and that you find the courage to start speaking up because everybody else is waiting for somebody else to go first. And I believe regardless of how you voted, regardless of what country you live in, there is this deep weariness within families, within communities, within friend groups to even talk about anything because we convince ourselves that they believe what the bots and the 10% loudest voices believe and they don't. And you're here to tell us that they don't believe that at all.
They absolutely do not. I mean, we have the data. You can download we've studied everything from the kind of lives people want to live, the kind of country they want to live in, what they want from education, healthcare, criminal justice. It is shocking when you get beyond the social pressure and the distortion. We are unbelievably similar in our aspirations, in our fears, in our desires, but we just don't believe it's true. And so we act accordingly. And to your point, when we get weary and we just go silent, it's understandable, but then it becomes part of the illusion. Right?
That's true, because nobody's
speaking up to the people that matter most to us.
The fringe yelling at each other.
Right. And so we all become caricatures of some fringe view that nobody really holds. And so one of the things that I've been the most proud of is, and the reason why I wanted to write this book is, you give people a concept and people go, oh, wow, I didn't realize this. And then it opens up the ability to start talking about, well, wait a minute. Like, here's some of the things I think, it's a safe way to have the conversation. But
just even hearing that your data conclusively shows that the majority of people literally agree on the things that they care about and want out of life, like, it makes me go, really? Because I've been in a duck and cover mode. Like, when is this madness going to end? When are we going to reconnect with what matters? Like, I kind of know that everybody agrees, but why is there not a reasonable person like, oh, because I know a reasonable person doesn't want to stand up and get caught in this crossfire.
Yep. That's
why we're like, okay, when is somebody normal going to pop up and show us the way? But you're here to say, we all have the ability to do this.
We do. And it's only we can do this because, like, if you think about it, there are people who profit from the illusions.
Correct.
Right. And especially in a binary political system.
Yes.
There's a lot of benefit to getting people to be more extreme.
Right.
And locked into an identity where you'll fall on that sword because these are my people.
Can you share the data on what people actually agree on and care about, so that as you're listening and watching, like, this is an incredible episode to send to family members and to send to friends that you feel like you can't talk to anymore because you believe the collective illusion that they somehow don't agree with you on core things. So what does the data say about what people actually care about?
So let's take a few things, because we can go all day on this, which is pretty incredible. So we studied the American Aspirations Index. So this was a US focused one.
Okay.
And we studied, what do you want for the country? And there were dozens and dozens and dozens of possibilities. And what was shocking to me, we found that in the top 10 aspirations for the country, we agreed on 8 out of the 10. Individual rights.
Yep.
We still believe that in free speech, treating each other with respect, having everyone have high quality healthcare. So there's a basic kind of life we want to live together. And we know that we owe each other certain things to make that life possible. And it turns out we agree on that. Now, as you said earlier, back in the day, we might disagree on how we do it, right? Do you have Medicare for all? Do you have more like Romney care we had in Massachusetts? There are different ways that we can debate how to get it done. But it turns out the ultimate aims we're shockingly similar on.
Well, I find it extraordinarily encouraging to hear that underneath all the noise of the loudest voices and the division and the bots, that human beings agree on 8 out of the 10 things that are the most important things. What did you find about our personal lives? Like, how do people want to live? And how do we tell me the list on what we agree on, and then let's unpack that.
So probably the single most important study we've ever done that I think has the most implications for society and for individuals it's called the Success Index.
The Success Index.
And we wanted to know, what do you mean by a successful life for you? What kind of life do you want to live? Nothing's more important than you feeling like you're living the kind of life that you want to live, even if no one else wants to live it, right? That's literally the American dream. That's literally like the key to flourishing. It's the key to social trust. It's the key to everything. Okay. So we did this, massive private opinion study with the same kind of trade-offs, right? Because you can't have everything in life.
Right.
We had 61 possible attributes for a good life.
So you can pick between 61.
Everything from having a family to being the richest person you know and everything in between. Okay. And then you force the trade-offs in this way that gives you anonymity and
So you have
plausible.
to rank what you want?
It's amazing. We can go into details on how they do it. There's some stuff on our site that'll show you. It's really cool, but you can't game it. It's so good at getting at private views. Okay. So let's talk about what most people see in terms of their top priorities for a good life. It warms my heart. The number one priority for a successful life is I want to do work that has a positive impact on other people. They want to contribute. Okay. In that top 10 across all demographics were things to do with relationships, family, character, self-improvement, and growth. Okay. In fact, one of the really crazy ones that I think is important is across every demographic in the top 10 was I want to be more engaged in my community. Now, here's what's interesting. We also measure how well you're achieving on these different things. Involved in your community was the lowest achieved of all top 10 priorities for your life. In fact, more people reported being debt-free than involved in their community at the level they want to. I mean,
what does that tell you as a researcher?
It tells me that, we've lost that civic layer of society that gave us the way to engage and contribute, and they don't know how to do it. And by the way,
and then if you also assume
so that's
that
where
nobody agrees with you and everybody.
So this is when we ask, so what do you think most people see as a successful life? Same trade-offs things. It flips entirely. They think everyone is obsessed with status, wealth, getting into the most prestigious school. The top thing that people think everyone else cares about is being famous.
Really?
Okay. In private, it's dead last. Now, let me unpack why that really matters, okay? Because there's an important thing about collective illusions, which is this. This generation's illusions tend to become next generation's private opinion if you don't do something.
Say that again.
This generation's collective illusions tend to become next generation's private opinion. So let's use the example of fame, because young kids don't know that we're lying. So young kids look to culture, look to media, like look to each other. What do we believe? What do we aspire to? So my colleagues at UCLA have tracked the effects of culture and media on middle school kids for a very long time. Up until a few years ago, the top thing that emerged every year had to do with character. Think like Mr. Rogers kind of stuff, right? Wonderful. A few years ago, it switched to I want to be famous, and it hasn't changed back. I remember they interviewed one kid in the study, and he said, I want to have 1 million followers. They said, okay, for what? And he said, doesn't matter. So it's bad enough when these illusions lead our young kids to pursue dead ends that we know that's not how you live a good life. That's bad enough. But when it starts to become about the fundamental assumptions of democracy, of free society, of our shared humanity, you can see the real danger to us individually and collectively.
So if this generation's collective illusion is that the number one aspiration in life is being famous because they have bought into the lie that that's what everybody else prioritizes and values. That's what everybody else thinks matters. How does that impact the next generation when it comes to their private opinion?
So because again, they don't know it's a lie.
Yes.
And they're looking to society to tell them initially what to value. Like we're social species.
Yes.
We internalize the norms, the aspirations. What does it mean to succeed? And they will internalize that as, well, that's what I believe. I mean, they genuinely believe it. They're not lying. The kids aren't lying. They'll learn the hard way again, just like we all have, that that's a really bad way to think about living a good life. But that's really sad. I mean, it has to come to that. And at the end of the day, like what's so important about this, and we can talk about why, when it comes to collective illusions, it's about individuals. It's about authenticity. Authenticity is the kryptonite of collective illusions. Silence is never the answer. Authenticity always is.
So is the reason why so many people are miserable as they're chasing success is because they're chasing a version of success that they believe other people have?
And let's be fair to all of us. We want to be successful on our own terms, and we also would love to be recognized for that.
But for what?
So if I think being successful is finding fulfillment and doing something. Like literally most people's view of success is getting meaning in their life by contributing to the lives of other people.
Yes.
That's literally, if I could sum it up, right?
Yes.
Well, I want to do that, but I would also love that you recognize that I do that and it's valuable. Like nothing wrong with wanting society to recognize my accomplishments, my aspirations, and validate them.
Yeah.
The slippery slope is I can, without thinking, just like with your drinking example, where you're like,
Yes.
I didn't even think about it, and suddenly I'm having a glass of wine.
Yes.
Without thinking about it, we can easily slip into wanting their affirmation first and corrupting what we choose to do as a result. And I'll give you why this matters. In our research, we linked achievement on that success index
Yeah.
to life satisfaction. Like how happy are you with your life? Here's what was amazing. To the extent that you were achieving on your private priorities.
And just to make sure I'm tracking with you, people publicly say, I want the fame, I want the house, I want the car,
I want the fancy
followers.
car, the biggest house.
But what secretly matters to you is your family, your friendships,
my community, being a good person. If you achieve on those, it directly increases life satisfaction. In fact, just
if you directly achieve on the things that are private.
Yes. And here's the thing. It was such a big effect because people are only achieving about 50% of their own priorities right now. If you bump that up by just 20 points, which is actually not hard when what we care about is being a good person and being involved in your community, anyone can do that, right?
Yeah.
It led to an increase in life satisfaction that was the same as doubling your salary.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a big deal, but now flip it around. No amount of achievement on what you think other people value increases life satisfaction at all. It is an absolute dead end. I mean, so this is what I say. This sort of personal success, I think, is the most important illusion we've ever found because it completely corrupts your own life. It leads to misery, right? And it's the one illusion that only you can solve. You have the power right now to solve that one, right? You don't need anyone's permission to start making different choices about the life you live.
To get honest with yourself about what privately matters and to stop obsessing about what you think everybody else thinks, because you're here to tell us all of that is an illusion. What you think other people think isn't even what they privately believe.
The group doesn't even believe the thing that you're about to conform to. And so when you do it, and enough of us do it, we literally destroy the very group that we care about.
And when you listen, and that's why I love this conversation, you're being reminded of the things that privately you know deep down are true, and that you can, from this moment forward, start living your life with the truth because the data shows it.
Ask yourself, how would you behave if you knew for sure that this thing was an illusion? You know what I mean? If you knew for sure your group didn't believe the thing that this fringe is just shouting at you.
Well, you'd probably be talking to your friends more. You'd probably
100%.
be involved in your community.
Yeah.
You'd probably wear what you want to wear.
Yeah.
You'd probably speak up more, because what happens when you recognize so much of the noise is noise, and 80% of us, based on the 8 out of 10 data that you have been crunching, really want the same things. Yeah. We may disagree a little bit on how to achieve it, but we want the same things. And the kryptonite, you said, to exploding all of this noise is you personally starting to make decisions day by day, conversation by conversation, moment by moment, that really align with those deeper things that you want for yourself.
Because this how we live our lives and the illusion that's like darkening our doorstep here. Because if you look at the research on what happens when we self-silence, so let's look at the downside of it and then look at the upside of being authentic. The downside of self-silencing is shocking. Okay. So research that followed longitudinally people who were self-silencing and people who weren't. Self-silencers actually have dramatically higher rates of cardiovascular disease, strokes, high cholesterol, everything. And there's a mechanism for it, which is basically when you're self-silencing or misrepresenting your views, you get this cognitive dissonance, this kind of like, I know I'm not being honest. Cortisol levels elevate and they stay elevated. And cortisol is good in the short term when you're under threat and absolutely toxic, breaks down blood vessels, everything. the study I'm referring to actually tracked women who have much higher rates of self-silencing and just found when you look at all the gaps in mental health issues, there's usually a gender gap, right? Eating disorders, depression, anxiety,
autoimmune disorders.
disorders. When you control for rates of self-silencing, the gender gap disappears. This is a big deal. This is a big deal for your physical health.
What does that mean to the person listening who knows that you're the person that stays silent in meetings? You're the person that doesn't rock the boat. And so you're in conflict with your privately held beliefs with yourself.
Yeah.
And you're living like that. And what you're saying is, based on the research, women do this more than men. And there's lots of reasons why. But in the data, when you look at people who are self-silencers, it has massively negative health outcomes. But when you remove the gender piece,
when you remove the self-silencing, the effect of that,
yes,
it turns out there isn't a gender gap in those things. It's about self-silencing. Like, that's not everything, right? There's lots of reasons why we can end up with anxiety. But I think the reason I say this is that when we self-silence, I think we tend to think that it's sort of benign, right? It's not much of a cost. Yeah, I don't feel so good, but I get to fit in. What I want to show you is, no, there is a profound cost to your physical health, right? There is a cost to your psychological health. I mean, self-silencing again is correlated with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, all these things. And there is a cost to humanity, right? In the false polarization, the distrust, the resentment that is pervasive in society today. And democracies do not survive this kind of threat. And I will say one thing, which is, one of my favorite psychologists, the humanist Carl Rogers, said, all of problems in society, from nations against nations, groups against groups, boil down to individuals at war with themselves. When we start to misrepresent our views, when we self-silence to fit in, we're at war with ourselves.
You're creating this war internally because you're forcing yourself to stay silent on something you don't agree with.
That's right. So you're internalizing all the downside and you don't recognize it. And what's funny is we don't connect those dots. We start seeing our health start to fail. We see our mental health start to deteriorate, and we look for all these reasons. I don't think it's coincidental. I don't think it's the only cause, but I don't think it's coincidental that our youngest generation that was literally born online has this skyrocketing anxiety and mental health challenges that are real, and they're coming from a number of places.
Right.
But for sure,
one we control
this, because we know in our data that Gen Z is self-silencing at the highest rate of any demographic that we've ever studied.
Why is that?
Because they're online more than anybody else.
And how does being online all the time reinforce this self-silencing?
Because when I'm in person, I get a lot more cues. First of all, I know they're real people. Like, I know a lot of them. When I'm online, I'm getting inundated with likes, with stuff pushed to me repeatedly. I'm like, and remember, your brain's going, loudest voices repeated the most are the majority. And so on almost everything, especially when you're in those formative years, what do I believe? Who am I? What do I aspire to? They're being shaped by illusions in ways that none of us have ever really experienced. Those of us that at least remember a time when there wasn't social media. And again, I'm not saying social media is bad. It's got a lot of upside, but like any technology, there's always a downside. And if you don't recognize the downside, you're going to live it.
I think as a parent, my heart just collapsed because I see that paralysis in self-expression, this like fear that it's going to be cringy, fear that somebody's going to judge it, fear that, you're not going to get the likes that you want, which is all driven by conformity, which then has you, A, silence yourself, and then B, now operate online in a way that you think gets people to like you because we're wired for conformity. Yeah. So how do you break this, given that we're wired for conformity and we understand how self-silence, because self-silence at work, you don't talk in meetings. Self-silence at works, you don't raise problems. You don't talk about the mistakes that happened and how you solved them. Self-silence, you start to operate the way everybody else does because you think that's the way you get ahead.
That's right. And by the way, when everyone starts doing that and starts conforming, groups lose their vitality. Groups lose their purpose, right? The purpose of a group is not blind conformity. It's that we're better together. It's that we can cooperate. It's that we can exchange ideas, right? That I can learn from you and be like, maybe I'm wrong, but that loses its function. And it just becomes this blind tribalism where we're just like, now who's our enemy? Okay, we're good because they're losing. It's just, it's pretty horrific. The trick is if you care about living a good life, authenticity is everything. And by the way, let me just be clear. Authenticity doesn't mean you even know all the facts about yourself. It's that you are acting in accordance with who you believe you are in that moment. That's the win. It doesn't mean you're right.
Give me an example.
So I could believe that I care about football. It's my preference. I love it so much because, my mom taught me it matters. I do actually care quite a bit about it. Like, and so I express myself that way. All right. I follow the Patriots. It's a little tough right now, but we'll get back. But let's say it turns out I buy season tickets and I go and I'm like, oof, actually, turns out I don't actually like football anymore. Or maybe I never did. I just thought I did. Okay. It wasn't about being accurate. It's that the choice I made at the time was consistent with who I believe I am. All the benefits of authenticity accrue from that, not from being accurate.
So in other words, you buying the Patriot tickets is an authentic decision. It aligns with what you believe to be true. You going and sitting there and freezing your rear end off while you sit on a sleeping bag, in the middle of January watching a game in an open stadium.
Quite literally.
Yes. And you're like, I don't think I like this anymore.
Yeah.
And that is also an authentic decision.
Yeah.
I had the same experience. I grew up skiing, loved skiing with my parents, loved skiing in Northern Michigan. Then I didn't ski for a while. Then I married a guy who's a ski racer.
Oh, geez.
And you know what I learned? I don't like skiing that much. Yeah. And, I can tell you an opposite one. Golf. Hate golf. No time for golf. Don't care about golf. Didn't get golf. Don't understand why people watch golf. Then all of a sudden, I'm riding on a golf cart with my husband. And we're chatting and talking because I just want to spend some time with them. Then I'm doing it with my parents. And I'm like, wow, it's kind of beautiful out here. Wow, we're talking a lot. Guess what?
Turns out
I'm now thinking I might want to play golf.
Yeah.
And that's authentic.
Correct. Because remember, what we don't want is for you to stop growing and changing. So at any moment, you have a set of beliefs about yourself.
Yep.
And as long as they're aligned with who you believe you are, you get all the benefits of authenticity, which they are incredible. A level of confidence that will just blow your mind, right? Not arrogance, just a deep confidence in yourself and your ability to make decisions. People who are authentic actually have higher levels of viewing the world as positive sum, which it is. There's enough, and we can grow the pie, not just materialistically, but psychologically and spiritually, right? Like your success does not hurt me. It actually benefits me. We can all win. But more importantly, authentic people have phenomenally better relationships. Because obviously, right? Because here's the thing. As we said a while back, we want belonging. What we end up giving into is fitting in.
What is the difference between belonging and fitting in?
Belonging is when you are recognized, accepted, and even loved for who you are. So you have to do that for yourself first. But because no one's going to do that for you. But when you're in groups, and we've all felt this, right? Like me with my grandmother, I knew I was good enough. Like flaws and all, it didn't matter. Like I didn't have to be somebody else, even in a small way, for her to love me. When you have that kind of relationship, there's nothing better in the world. Okay. Fitting in is you accept me if. You accept me if I like the things you like, if I do the things you want me to do, if I decide to be a computer scientist instead of an artist. So many of our relationships are built on that kind of if. And, just like when you're not physically healthy, you forget what it feels like to be healthy. When we're used to fitting in, we forget what it feels like to truly belong. And I'll say this, to anyone listening or viewing, you deserve to belong. You should not accept the status of just fitting in. It's not good enough. It doesn't lead to the place that you want it to lead to. and it causes a lot of harm to you and society.
What is the first step? Because I think as you're listening, what you just said is both a wake-up call and it can be a little crushing to your soul when you recognize your whole life, all you've tried to do is fit in.
Yeah.
And I know that everybody wants to feel like their authentic self. Everybody wants to be proud of themselves. Like you want to lay your head down on the pillow at night and know that you did the best that you could. You made the best decisions that you could, that you're proud of how you showed up, that you had good intentions. That is the gold standard, that you know, it was a good day because you tried the best that you could to be a good person. And that starts with you making good decisions for yourself. Correct. And not self-silencing to fit in.
Here's the important part about authenticity. It is a process. It's not a destination. There's no such thing as you could put all the work you want in right now and you're like, I'm done. That's not how it works. Because a flourishing life is one where you grow and change and discover and all that stuff. So even if you were 100% right now, if you lock that in, you'd be inauthentic in the future. So the things that people need to understand is, again, it's never too late. This is what's amazing. All the benefits of authenticity, the research shows, like they accrue very quickly to you, no matter how old you are, no matter where you're starting from. It's pretty amazing. You just have to get started. Okay. And here's the thing. There's two things from my perspective. The first is getting a handle on what you think you really believe.
How do you do that
so
when you're like been gaslit by all the noise?
Here's a very simple step that I've used and I've shared and people have used and it's worked. Ask yourself why on things you believe. Because when they're your honest beliefs that you've arrived at, you know why. I'll give you an example. I have a deep commitment, like probably most people, to human rights. It might be the most important concept to me of anything in the world, that every individual has moral worth and we are equal to one another. And we are never, ever a means to someone else's ends. That's how I want to be viewed and treated. That's how I will view and treat other people. Human rights flows from dignity. Okay. So I know for sure I believe that. But you'll be shocked at how many things you think you believe are just the norms of your society that you've never really questioned because you want to fit in. For me, didn't do very well in school, and we can that's a understatement. I failed out of high school with a 0.9 GPA.
0.9? That's possible?
You have to work really hard to do that poorly. I ended up failing out. A couple of months later, my girlfriend at the time, who was my wife for 29 years, found out she was pregnant. And this is rural Utah. It was not something one does in rural Utah. We were on welfare. We ended up with 2 kids by the time I was 20, doing a string of minimum wage jobs. I mean, we had a paper route at 4 a.m. to supplement our income. We were selling blood plasma, all the things you have to do. And recognizing rock bottom, I was working at what was Circuit City, which they've gone out of business now. And on my lunch break, I didn't have any money. So I went over to Barnes & Noble and I was perusing the self-help section. I had like no self-esteem. No, I'd lied to myself a lot. I knew something had to change. And I happened upon a book called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. It said, self-esteem is not something you can directly act on. It's the alignment of your beliefs and your behavior. And if your behavior and beliefs don't align, you won't respect yourself. Why would you? But this was the nugget for me that completely changed my life. I had always assumed that my beliefs were my beliefs and that my behavior was what needed to change. But this book told me that's not true. That you may not actually believe the things you believe that you believe. And in my case, it was religious in nature. I had tried so hard to align my behaviors to a set of beliefs that came from my religion. And I just failed a lot. And no, those behaviors weren't bad behaviors. They were just inconsistent. And I thought, well, wait a minute. It could be my beliefs that are the thing that's causing the problem. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, why do I believe this? And I realized I didn't believe. And once I recognized that and started on the path of thinking about what is it, who am I, what do I believe? things got a lot easier.
Why?
Because suddenly I knew the root problem. I was constantly trying to get my behavior to align, just like if you're trying to conform to a group, constantly trying to, what am I supposed to do now? What do we do? How do I dress? What do I drink? What career do I choose? And once that I had permission to start questioning my own beliefs, I was able to get on a different path. And it never would have changed without that.
I think that's super profound. I think it's also crazy inspiring that you went from there to becoming a graduate school professor at Harvard and now running a think tank and doing this deeply important work. And I was so excited to have you on because I fundamentally refuse to believe that we are this divided.
Yeah.
I fundamentally refuse to believe that people are unreasonable or lack character. I also fundamentally refuse to give that much power to all the noise.
Right.
And, one of the things that I want to hover on the authenticity piece, because when somebody walks into a room that is very much authentically themselves, whether they have on just a cool outfit or they have energy about them or there's a kindness to them, whatever it may be, you feel it.
The energy of that is unbelievable.
It is intoxicating. And it's not a level of arrogance. There is something that I truly believe that we're all yearning for it. And we're looking for someone to give us the permission.
That's right. And they're not trying to get you to do something. I'm going to be me, you be you, put it in different terms, like let them, let me, right? And they're the embodiment of that. Some things happen because we so deeply want that. We gravitate toward the energy there is real. Right?
So how do you cultivate that energy? You mentioned let them and let me. And you also, when we were talking, said that is a tool that really helps you apply this research and this data that let them, like, why don't you explain it? Because how can you use those two words, let them,
that's it,
and those two words, let me, as a way for you to start to become more authentically yourself?
Yeah. Well, this is why I was so excited to talk to you, because my scientific research, the work we do at Populous, my think tank, is, I would say, what we've uncovered is the science behind let them, let me. We talked a lot about the conformity and all the problems there, but also the broader societal consequences of not doing that.
Wow.
Right? So what do we know about how we shatter illusions, how we get back to authenticity? And it's the practical stuff you need to do to get on that path.
Mm-hmm.
When I read your book, I was like, okay, if you just do this, it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so bringing it to a level of getting people on that journey. Again, authenticity is a journey. It's process. It's not a destination. You can start anytime, anywhere, no matter how old you are, no matter what your circumstances. Then if all we did, and I'll tell you why. If you lean into let them, I mean, you framed it a lot, and I think it's right, around how miserable we get when we try to control everybody else. But it goes a little further, right? Because as we start to participate in that sort of like, you should believe what I'm saying too.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny about collective illusions, and this is one of those, like, I could not believe this. So once you start lying about your views, the research is pretty clear. You start to lean into that. You become an enforcer of it.
Because you don't want to admit you're wrong?
Yes. And because you always think people are going to find me out. Because I know I'm lying. It's called the illusion of transparency. They think everyone can tell that I'm not really a true believer. And so it turns out that people who lie about their views have a high probability to become enforcers of that view on other people. I'll give you a concrete example. Like every time I hear a pastor who's anti-gay now, I'm like, they're probably gay. The number of times that just turns out to be true, I'm like, yeah, you're protesting a bit much, right? But like once you're hiding that part of yourself, you start to become the person that's literally leads the witch hunt to prove like, no, look, I'm a true believer. And so don't be that person, right? Because like the let them part of it is the more you're seeking to control their people, not just their behavior, but their beliefs, you are leading them down a path of self-silencing that will be catastrophic for them. But now you also know it's catastrophic for all of us.
Well, the other application that I see based on everything you shared is that very profound difference between feeling a sense of belonging versus an obsession with trying to fit in. And to me, if you could speak a little bit about how the let them and the let me really gives you a tool to notice those moments where you're so scared of other people's opinion, or you're so seeking fitting in that you cut off access to authenticity and belonging.
That's right. And so we did the let them side, right? Because you are literally making it less likely that the people around you can live authentic lives. You talked about this so well in the book, like the kid's like, really? Okay. For the dance you're going to, really? You haven't, okay. They want to wear certain things. They want to do these things. It's like, let them, because part of that is let them be their authentic self.
Oh, yes. Your need to control is actually teaching other people that they have to fit in.
Yes.
And you are squashing somebody else's authenticity.
That's exactly right.
So it's how you stop yourself from making people conform.
Correct. And then you flip it around and the let me, I deserve to be authentic. And so that flip side, if I'm going to give that same grace to other people now, I owe it to myself to give myself that same grace. I deserve to belong. I don't need to settle for fitting in, right? I deserve all the benefits that come from being my truest self. And I shouldn't compromise that just because I believe other people want something different. And again, when collective illusions are layered into that thing you're about to like give up your authenticity for, they don't even want. Like, so what are we doing?
I just want to say, I was kind of blown away because when I first started using let them first, it was really to stop trying to control everybody so that I wasn't so stressed out all the time.
Right.
But then it became very clear how my default was to fit in. My default was to seek approval. My default was to make everybody else happy. My default was to buy into the collective illusion and allow that to dictate what I do or don't do, like navigating your life based on everybody else. And you're telling us all of the things that you believe everybody else believes, they're largely wrong. And we're all desperate for somebody to say, hey, it's time to just stand up and be authentic. It's time for you to stop trying to fit in. And it's time for you to make decisions and live your life in a way that really aligns with you. And I hadn't thought about the let me part truly as a tool for authenticity and courage in that way.
And that's how it resonated with me, which isn't that funny?
Yeah.
And if you read all of our research and you realize, wait, so if I let them be their authentic self, and we do that at scale, what kind of society would we have?
Well, see, I worry that if we let people be their authentic self, that we would have a runaway train of people who are selfish and not conscientious and who are chasing fame and profit and trashing human beings for all the tech giants, and that bots would run the world. And what you're now teaching me is that my belief that if I just let people run wild, the worst of humanity would rise to the top. And you're telling me, Mel?
Not true.
What is true?
Go back to the success index.
Okay.
The private highest aspirations we have for the lives we want to live ourselves. Okay. Remember, top trade-off priority. I want to do work that has a positive impact on other people. I want to be trustworthy. I want to have a family. I want to be good to other people. I want to be involved in my community. I want to achieve on things that matter. I want an education. I want these things. Like, this is what people would do if we leaned into let them, let me. And the only reason we're afraid of it is because we've fallen for the illusions, right? We've been with this illusion for a while. And so we're like, oh, I mean, it's funny. We ask people about trust.
Yeah.
Privately, are you trustworthy? 93% of people said, of course I'm trustworthy. And I want that. It matters to me. What do you think other people would say? Oh, no. Other people don't care about being trustworthy. They're not trustworthy. And you're like, yeah, it's a massive illusion. And so if I'm looking around thinking other people don't even care about being trustworthy, and I think they all want fame and the zero sum, like winner take all, they will step on my thing to get to me. Why would I want to let them
Yes.
be able to live their authentic lives. Because if that were who they really are, that would be awful.
Yes.
And so what we end up doing is having to control everybody.
Yes.
And that's true in our interpersonal lives that you wrote about. It's also true all the way up to our political lives, where we've given up on these fundamental values like, you know what? You live your life, I'll live mine, as long as we're not hurting each other. Like, we've lost a willingness to invest in one another because we believe the illusion.
Where did all this lack of trust come from? I know you have a story.
So we have social trust, which is trust in strangers,
Okay.
right? The single best predictor of the health and flourishing of democracies. At the end of the day, we talk about trust in institutions. I don't need to trust the government. I need to have confidence that they'll do what they say. So accountability, transparency. The only trust that matters is that we trust each other. So it predicts almost everything that matters collectively. And ever since we implemented in the 1930s in the United States, scientific management, Frederick Taylor, this is where we got standardization to everything. Everything became standardized. He invented the concept of a manager. So you just do the job I'm telling you. You don't get any say in what you do in the name of efficiency. Every single generation since has had lower social trust than the preceding generation. Right now in America, we have the lowest levels of social trust ever recorded.
Now, is that true or is that an illusion? You know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's
true.
even worse in private right now than it is in public.
Oh, no.
Now, here's the good news, though. Okay. And this is what matters. If I could wave a magic wand and say, what's the one thing I could change about this country besides, and again, honestly, everybody leaning in to let them and let me, because the illusions would have nowhere to hide. And we'd obviously see that we have a lot in common and that people trusted. It's this illusion of trust. Okay. What's interesting in our data. So when you look across the world, like Scandinavian countries have very high levels of social trust. And you can see the cohesion, the trust in each other, the investment in each other. You only have to get above 50% social trust for that to kick in. When a majority of people believe a majority of people in their society are trustworthy, good things start to happen.
Yes.
When you dip into like the 30s, it spirals the other way, right? We start to need to control each other. We're in the low mid 30s right now. Okay. In our data though, in private, here's what's I think is fascinating. If you cut the data by whether you're self-silencing, people that self-silence have the lowest levels of social trust ever. They are like in the low 30s% of people who believe other people can be trusted. Okay. If you're one of the 1/3 that hasn't self-silenced, they have levels of social trust that rival Scandinavian countries. So there's something about feeling like you're in a society where you can't even say your opinion. Why would I trust everybody else if I feel like I can't be me?
Yeah.
So this issue of needing to reclaim an authenticity, it might be the single most important thing you could do to heal your society, because it is the fastest way to increase social trust.
Well, I can give an example that came to mind as you were talking about plummeting trust. If you have ever had any kind of tragedy hit your community, whether it's a fire or a flood or something else, what happens?
Yeah.
People reveal who they are at their core. Like you have some illness in a family members that are divided on politics that haven't talked for 2 years, all of a sudden come in because it reduces us to just our core values in a moment where it's all hands on deck.
You're exactly right. Like I had a couple of years ago, I lost my wife of 29 years, and it was unbelievable to see people who I thought I had beefs with, right? Some people we had challenges. It doesn't matter anymore. There's this common humanity that comes together. And you're right. You see this in these trauma and tragedy. We reveal who we are. Okay.
Why is that true?
Because the norm around tragedy, right?
Yeah.
We have norms in this country and other countries that it's all hands on deck. We just rally. That's what we do. Okay. I was a little worried some of the last natural disasters in the country when the first thing we saw was the politicization of it, the blaming right off the bat. But then that dissolved pretty quick at the ground level into we need to help each other, because as human beings, we empathize. That's one of our magical traits, right? We can put ourselves in other people's shoes. We can think about how we would want to be treated, and we can activate compassion and act on it. When we see people in those times of need, it reveals what our real character is. Imagine what it would have been like if the illusion was correct.
That nobody cares, we don't trust you, nobody shows up.
Nobody shows up. And the thing right now, that's not the case. But if we don't recognize this problem and take some responsibility for it, it could become the case.
Do you truly believe, based on all of this data, that if every single one of us as an individual were to really embrace the facts that when it comes to the things that we all value as human beings, we all value the same 80% of things. So we are all so much more alike.
Mm-hmm.
We want the same things for ourselves and each other. If we were to operate with that, and then we were to go into our day-to-day lives and say, my only job is to let other people be themselves and be who they are, and with the presumption that underneath it, they value character.
Mm-hmm.
Underneath it, they want meaningful work. Underneath it, they want better for their friends and for their family. That if we operate like that, and then we also say to ourselves, my job is to then show up and make decisions with the information I have, the best that I can day to day,
Mm-hmm.
that really align what I truly value, like to give myself that permission and to find the courage to do it, whether it's how you post on social or whether you talk at work or whether you ski or not this
Mm-hmm.
season, whether you want to live where you live, whether you want to go to Sizzlers or not, like that you just start to slowly calibrate your life back toward the things that you know deeply matter to you. Like simply volunteering in a place in your community would make you feel more authentic.
Yes.
Changing your major could make you feel more authentic. Asking your brother or sister for a little help with mom and dad because you've self-silenced would make you feel a little authentic. It doesn't have to do with what they are going to say.
That's right.
You may have a collective illusion that they're not going to do anything because you think everybody's selfish now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the noise. The truth
It's
is
the noise.
deep down, people care about the same things.
And
it starts with you. You really believe that that's what's going to turn this all around.
Yeah. Let me give you a historical example when I say, because it feels like the problems are too big.
Yes.
They must require these big solutions.
Yes.
It's not true. Let me give you an example. As a reformed academic, I'm going to lean into a bigger example just once,
Please.
But I think it's important. When the problem is a collective illusion and you pursue the right strategy, which is this authenticity strategy, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about persuading, it's about revealing, it's showing people the kind of social change that can happen how fast it can happen, how big it can happen. The best example of this is the Velvet Revolution in Czechoslovakia. This has puzzled historians for a long time. It happened in late 80s. Czechoslovakia had been under communist rule for a long time, just brutal. Other countries had tried to revolt. Hungary, other things like bloody massacres as a result. The Velvet Revolution is famous because it's the only time a people have overthrown a communist regime without a single person dying, without a single shot being fired. Okay?
Wow.
And people are like, how does that happen? It's an anomaly. Okay. The best part about it is who led it, and this is how you'll get to the secret of it. There's a person named Václav Havel. Okay. And I'm going to say right now, for everyone listening or watching, if you go online, you can download for free online. He wrote a manifesto about this called The Power of the Powerless. That will chill you to the bones. It will sound like he's writing about our time today. But he writes about how he discovered the real problem in their society was this collective illusion. So he's had no military experience. He wasn't a politician. He was a poet and a playwright. And he was anti-communist, but he decides he writes this play called The Garden Party. And it was a satire about communism. It was so subtle that the censors didn't even know they were being made fun of. Okay. So he puts it on. It becomes a runaway hit. It's like the Hamilton of the time there. It's sold out every night. He attends every single play, and he doesn't watch the play. He watches the audience. And he said, they laughed at all the right parts. They laughed at things that you would not find funny if you truly believed in communism. And he writes in The Power of the Powerless that he recognizes the fundamental problem was not that the people of Czechoslovakia believed in communism. It's that they believed that they believed. It was a collective illusion. I mean, I don't know how he got there, but it's amazing he figured it out. The solution then was not weapons. It was not even political. It was authenticity. He called it authenticity and personal responsibility. And here's what he did. He said, well, then the answer is we've got to create ways for people to start to be comfortable living in truth again, because we've become way too comfortable living in the lie. Okay. So he starts what he called the small works. How do we help people start to lean into their authentic selves in ways that weren't risky to begin with? Literally created a literary magazine so people could publish poetry. They did gardening. They did all these things. People mocked him. Like even people who, his fellow revolutionaries were like, this is so naive. They have all the guns. You're going to defeat them with authenticity and personal responsibility. But they did. And here's what's crazy. Nobody saw it coming. The CIA completely missed it. The KGB missed it entirely. Even Havel himself didn't appreciate how fast it could change when it was an illusion. Just a few months before the student protest that led 12 days of protest, government falls. He's interviewed in an international magazine and he's trying to rally the troops. And he's like, look, revolutions take time. You have to be committed. He's like, look, I probably won't even be alive to see the end of this, but I am in it, right? 3 months later, he was the first democratically elected president of a free Czechoslovakia. That's what I mean when I say, when the problem is an illusion, two things. Only we can solve it. It didn't require somebody from on high telling us something. It was the everyday people learning to live in truth in small ways that start to build habit that lead to we believe this now, right? And I think about that story all the time because I think, look, if a poet can overthrow communism under a collective illusion, think what you can do in your own life. Think what we can do together. I promise you, the Power of the Powerless, it's free. It's like 80 pages. It is unbelievable. It is, never forget, like this thing that you want more than anything, to be authentic. And you should want it. It's like almost magical in what it does for you and for us. Is the thing that you should do for yourself. And again, it is the most important thing you could do to heal society.
Or your family.
Your family,
or your community,
your
or your
loved
kids,
ones, your
or
relationships.
Your marriage.
Yeah, it's a journey. You say this all the time, right? I think we overestimate what we can do in the short term and we underestimate what can happen over time.
In the long term.
Yeah.
And we also underestimate the power of these small micro changes. And you talk a lot in your work about the micro changes.
It's all that matters.
And it could mean speaking up at work. It could mean going to church this weekend. It could mean volunteering in your community. It could mean picking up a book and getting back into reading fiction instead of scrolling on social media.
Find the thing that connects you back to who you believe you are right now. And it doesn't have to be these massive life-changing things. In fact, it rarely ever requires that. Again, if you can literally transform a tyrannical society into a free society on the back of authenticity, like you can change your life.
What is one thing that you could challenge us to do based on all the research, the power of authenticity, to do this week? What would it be?
This is going to sound basic, but it's do something. You've got to get that action bias. Again, listen to Vaslav. It doesn't have to be huge, but find those places where you know you've been going along. You know you really didn't agree.
Could be eating. Like, what are some of the simple places where people do this?
I'm talking literally like, go back to the very beginning. No, I'm not actually drinking tonight.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Little things. Hey, are we sure we want to go to that restaurant?
Yep.
Just stuff that, I'm talking about your preferences. They don't have to be these deep, profound, like, let's have a political conversation about it. Could, but just, first of all, it when you're not being authentic. Like, so I don't have to tell you.
True. It's so true.
Like it doesn't, it's just, and just say, look, I'm going to commit to one act of authenticity. And I would say, find the smallest meaningful act. And I'll tell you, remember that reward signal I talked about with conformity?
Yes.
It also works with authenticity.
Tell me more about that.
So when people who desire authenticity believe they are acting on it, and we've seen this with neuroimaging studies and everything, they get the same reward response because your brain's like, that, do more of that. And then you get the anticipation of it. And one small act leads to another, It becomes habit. Then it becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. And you won't even realize it happened. And then you'll become the person that everyone looks at and goes, I want to be like them. I want to be around them. The energy you bring into a room. And the thing is, it's absolutely contagious. Not only because you create permission for other people to unbutton their pants at the table, right? But
mine buttoned? I was like, did I button them back up?
Because we know this from the research that happiness itself is contagious. When the people around you within your network increase their happiness, you get about a 25% boost for free.
Wow.
Become that person. And if you worry too much about the end goal, it feels insurmountable. I remember thinking when I was like minimum wage, welfare, 2 kids, no high school diploma, if I tried to think about what life might be like in the long, it just seems insurmountable. All I thought was, what's the next step that I can take? And then you take another step. And for me, and I don't mean this to sound arrogant, it took 7 years from when I failed out of high school to when I got into Harvard for my doctorate. Another 7 years before I was a professor. Like, that time's going to go past no matter what you do. And when you think about those sort of time horizons, 5 years is going to go by, whether you like it or not. And all the fear you feel, first of all, I'll say most of it is completely unfounded. Now you know why. It's a prison in our own minds. We're at war with ourselves. But whatever fear you feel, remember, something's wrong right now. Like, the status quo in your own life is not good enough. You know that you deserve better than that. That time's going to pass. Just start the small acts, get on that path of authenticity, and I promise you, you won't even recognize yourself.
Todd Rose, what are your parting words?
It's easy for individuals just living their life, trying to make ends meet day to day. You barely have enough time to do anything for yourself. The problems in our society seem so big, so insurmountable, that there's an apathy that sets in because what could I possibly do?
It's also exhausting.
It is exhausting because it's exhausting in part because we don't know what to do. We feel like nothing we could do would ever matter, and we feel helpless. It's not true. Like, at my core, I believe it, but I also have the data to back it up. You matter more than you could possibly know. That's true in general, but it is particularly true when the problems of our society are related to collective illusions. You have a role to play. Do it for yourself. Your life will be immeasurably better. You will, like, you and I both know, I pinch myself. I'm like, I cannot believe I get to live this life.
Same. And I also can't believe how long I spent it trying to fit in and how exhausting and fatiguing it was, how long I gaslit myself saying there's nothing I can do and all the noise is correct when I deeply fundamentally believe that's not true, that we all kind of want the same things. And then when you realize, wait a minute, if I'm just authentically myself, the illusion disappears.
Do it for yourself just for that, but do it for us.
Todd, I am so grateful. I am grateful that you're doing this work. I am so grateful that you are able to break it down for all of us. And so I just want to thank you for the proof and the permission to believe in the better nature in all of us. And I'm also grateful that just allowing yourself to be yourself and finding the courage to start to point your life back toward the things that you know make you feel like you is actually the answer to all the big problems. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for really listening or watching something that will help you be more authentic. And thank you for sharing this more than any other episode, we do have the power to change things. Do not buy into the lies. I really want you to live in the truth. And I love you for being here. And I do believe in your ability to create a better life. And today, after our conversation and everything I learned, I believe in your ability and my ability to create a better world. Alrighty, I'll see you in the very next episode. I'll welcome you in the moment you hit play. And thank you for being here with me on YouTube and watching all the way to the end. And thank you for sharing this episode with the people in your life that you care about. All right, I know you want to watch another video. I would go to this one next, and I'll be there to welcome you in the moment you hit play.